Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the old card shop. We are back again with one of my good friends in the hobby, Mr. Alex from NostalgiaNomics. And so, if you haven't already, if you don't know who Alex is, I went ahead and linked his website down below so you can kind of get a glimpse for yourself about what he's all about. He's been doing some really big things in the hobby. I want to talk to him about it because I actually haven't really caught up with him in a long time. But what do you do these days, Alex? A lot of patch breaks, and you've been doing some awesome content. But what's your channel all about, just in case anyone is tuning in for the first time who hasn't heard of you?
Yeah, man. It started out as really strictly like Pokemon investing, and as I kind of grew in the business side of things, and I ended up going full time in the hobby, like a mix of content and buying and selling. I kind of it shifted more to like half investing, half like business, buying and selling, making shorter term plays, grading, things like that. So a lot of the same stuff you do. Little less of the in person stuff, which I'm hoping to learn from the master a little bit on that today, on the vending side. But yeah, pretty much everything that has to do with Pokemon cards is what brings us here.
Yeah, I love your content, man. I'm really enjoying how you've grown over the couple of years that we've been friends in the hobby and how it's evolved. And I really feel like you've become like the king of modern Pokemon investing, or at least that's kind of the perception. I would say in the YouTube sphere, you get a lot of really good like clout and views as far as like modern YouTube or modern Pokemon investing is going. So is that still something that you're super passionate about?
Yeah, man, it is just because like I just think it's so universal for anyone. Like if you're super hardcore deep in this stuff and you're watching the markets every day, like modern sealed investing is still one of the best options for you. If you're brand new, it's such an easy entry point. They make great display pieces. They're very low risk, especially if you're getting in at release, like depending how low you can find it, 80, 90, $100 a booster box. And they have such a stable track record of rising in price over time. Obviously, some sets do better than others. Some sets go up more than others. But over the course of time, it's just they've proven to always rise. And it's just like if it just seems like an easy way to enjoy the hobby with low risk, with having good display, good collection, and not having to worry about it or be too engaged to do well with it.
Yeah, and I really tend to agree with you. I'm getting bad echo here. Hold on, let me try to fix that with my
Oh
mic.
yeah, chat's saying echo. Just here for the echo. Terry Lake, what's up, man? We got Shiny Rayquaza, Johto Jake, Stank Egg Roll. What's up, guys? Fat Belly, what is going on, man? Appreciate seeing all you guys here.
Okay, is that any better? We getting some echo, or did I get it sorted out? Tell me, chat, how's that? Let me keep talking a little bit. I feel like I'm still getting just a little bit. But anyway, let's see if that's a little better. It's not quite as bad. This is really weird. I never get echo. I'm doing nothing different here.
You're gonna have to ask them because everyone always says my sound's off, and I never hear it, so I don't
know. Maybe it's because let me move my microphone a little bit around. I could probably, maybe some stuff is kind of in the way because there is something usually not there.
Are you still using that snowball mic?
Yeah, I still use the blue snowball, which might need an upgrade. Okay, how is that? Is that any better? I just switched over to the Logitech.
You're lower.
Okay, is that any better, chat? Tell me. Alex he's not hearing the echo as bad, but I know that there was a pretty bad echo. I even heard it. So is that any better? Sorry, anyone. I apologize if it's still, we're going on and on about this. Okay, well, maybe it's too low. Okay, let's see. Test. Is that a little better? Turn the mic volume up a little bit. Okay. Anyway, we're just gonna go on because I think it's a little bit better, and I don't want to linger too much on this. Chat, tell me down below if it's still really bad. Then I'll spend a couple more minutes after we talk a little bit, and Alex can talk while I try to adjust some things more. Okay, good. It seems like it's working a little better, maybe a little lower. I turned my microphone up, so hopefully that'll help. I also have a new puppy, so if you hear a little crackling in the background, my new puppy is chewing on his toy. He likes this like badger thing that you put like empty water bottles in. and it makes like that crinkling water bottle noise, and he chews on it, and it's really obnoxious, but it keeps him busy, so it's better than him chewing on my furniture, so I apologize about that. But anyway, yeah, modern investing, everything you said about modern investing, I tend to agree with. I actually really think that modern booster box investing is really the best route to go, and I think that's kind of your stance you tend to take as well. And getting in
Yeah.
at that like $100 or even under mark is always a really safe play. And I feel like just over time, it is super safe. My issue with what I would say modern investing is, and why I don't do it really though, even though I very much so sort of advocate for that is a safe way to throw money in the closet for Pokemon cards, is it's really difficult to kind of flip and make a lot of steady stream of money that way. So I also, like you said, tend to go for more of the flipping, like singles that I don't think are gradable, or then gradable singles I'll grade and then sell as PSA 10s, and just kind of do the normal market route that way. But yes, very much so, more involved with the vending, in person at conventions, especially this last like year and a half or 2 years. I really switched my business over from 100% live streaming during the pandemic and then shortly after to selling completely off of the internet, all in person. And it really has been a lot of fun. So happy to chop it up and talk a lot about that, because you're going to be going to Chicago. I might even go to Chicago, possibly if I can sneak away, but my wife might not be happy about that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so I didn't
Dude,
know
I
you
was
were
I
first
was
time
pulling for
watching.
you. I was in the Discord group, and I was like, everyone needs to message Josh and tell him, make him feel bad for not coming.
Yeah, I mean, it was the guilt trip was real. I got a couple messages from friends suggesting I make the trip, and I was already I was really in my own head wanting it too. It's just, it still might happen. So never say never. The flights are cheap. My puppy is trainable. If there's a way, a magical way, we can train him to not be so destructive when he's not being watched by both of us, then there's probably a way I'm going to make it out there. Because Chicago sounds like a great time. Like, anyone watching, if you haven't been to a Collecticon, they're not all great. I mean, they're all fine if you're from the area, but not all of them are worth, like, traveling across country for. I think there are a couple Collecticons each year that are worth, like, traveling across the country to be at, just for whatever reason, for, like, the timing, where they are, everyone who's planning to go, like, your online friends, they all, for some reason, go to Chicago, it seems like. And I think Chicago is going to be one of those.
Yeah,
But
I
other
agree.
than vending, what else has been new with you, man? I kind of wanted to see like what's new. You got any new kids or something randomly? Or I know I got a puppy, but you get any new pets or anything like that?
Man, it's been business as usual. To be honest with you, it's pretty stable. I mean, going back to what you said about like the whole booster box investing, I get it. Like, there's very few people I think that can run a successful business with just sealed product. I mean, obviously there's some that do it and they do it well, but it's just massive amounts of volume. And so, I feel like to run a successful business without doing any single slabs, grading, live vending, anything else, just sealed. Yeah, I don't. It's not very realistic. I mean, you're gonna have to do something. So, like, it's definitely more for the passive, investor for that. But no, for me, I mean, obviously, it's still like part of what I do. I do put booster box cases away, but yeah. So I focus mostly on the ultra modern stuff for grading. It's just easy to get your hands on. I stick to English. The margins are better, but yeah, it is harder to find cards. And so I do try to source as much possible as like local shows, local card shops, obviously Collecticons. So I've really cut out a lot of my. That's one of the biggest changes. I've cut out a lot of my online sourcing for cards. And my gem rates have went through the roof. Like, we're talking English 80 to 90% 10 rates, which is off the charts. But it's because everything I buy is in person. I look at it, I make sure it's so like, not buying online's really helped that. So I've been able to increase my margins. So I'm able to have to like do less work and move less cards and actually make more doing it. And then obviously, like you were doing the streaming. I do pack rips on my channel two nights a week. If there's like a new set that's released, I'll kick in another night. And so it's just kind of a mixture of all that. Obviously, the YouTube content, it just kind of gets all thrown into the big bowl, and all together it kind of creates an income.
Yeah, I mean, and what you've built has been really admirable, because I think you go through like your website, you've been doing the Patreon as well, which is really cool to see like that community growing. You have your regular Discord, which has a great big community as well. your Discord's got to be one of the biggest in the actual hobby that like is active right now. I've got a small Discord, but it only has like less than 200 people. What are you pushing, like 2,000 at this point?
No,
3,000?
it's not as big as you think. It's a little over 1,000. I think it's close to 1,100.
That's still pretty good, man.
We
I'd say that's really pretty good for active. Like, I'd say you have a lot of active people in there.
Yeah, and you know, we did go through some troubled times on there where I did have to step in and start, you know, unfortunately banning people to where it just got so over the top. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of like censorship and all that, but man, when you just let people run rampant, like the stuff people will say, it's just like, I was in fear Discord was just going to delete my whole group because it was just getting so bad in there, and it was turning people off. No one wanted to talk in fear of getting attacked, and like really, and I'm not talking about like just back and forth, like really attacked. Like, I mean, it got terrible. So I got rid of a lot of the problems, and it's really opened up a lot more convo again, and a lot more activity because people aren't afraid of that anymore. And so yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, and I honestly, I've seen the evolution of how Discords go, and that's just natural. You kind of always have to get to that point where you have to start laying down some moderation, start kind of putting some ground rules down so that it doesn't kind of get too big for itself. But overall, I think it's really great to have that kind of community, and it's nice to see that it's really grown so much for you, because I remember when it was in its wee little infant ages, and it's certainly, I feel like you've done very well with that. I'm going to try to work on my mic a little bit here as we kind of go through this next segment, but I turned it all the way up. I'm going to change directions to see where it's at. I don't know if it's any better than it was, but hopefully it is. I just kind of moved the mic closer to me because that seems to be maybe the best thing here. It was kind of tucked away for a little while.
Yeah, you definitely got louder.
Okay, yeah, so I think it was kind of behind a couple things. I had like this Hidden Fates ETB thing blocking my mic, so that probably was obscuring it a little bit. But yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that, as like I've even grown my community, it's just you kind of have to grow with it. So I feel like the next big thing for me is I'm going to probably try to grow the Discord more. I sort of gone stagnant with it because I really had big plans for my Discord, not just to be like a community, like yours is a great just community kind of just place to hang out. I don't want mine to be a place to hang out at all. I want it to literally be a useful tool for people to use, and I started off pretty strong, posting shows from all over, like collecticons, different local shows that my friends were at. Anything I knew was happening, I was posting, making new things, and I kind of let that kind of go by the wayside and let people just sort of post their own shows. And I even stopped reposting some of the shows that I was going to. So I really am going to try to amp up that Discord a little bit. So if you're in the Discord and you're like, he's not doing much with it right now, I know that. I apologize. It's something that I'm definitely going to work on. When the summer sort of cools off, because that's the busiest season for me in these local shows, I recognize it's not going to be as more useful when the summer is over, but having that little extra time to really kind of focus in on it and maybe make it a little bit more useful, I think will be more beneficial for everyone. So if you're there and you haven't joined the Discord, go join my Discord. I'll link down below in the comments. If I haven't already linked it here, I'll link it after the video is over in like the description of the video. And basically all it is this Discord intended for sellers and buyers at local conventions to post up the flyers. You always see those flyers they give out advertising the next convention, and where it's going to be and the dates and times and everything. And I just want people to take a quick picture on their phone, put it in the Discord for the region that they're in, and then let everyone kind of go to town with it. But I'm going to do a little more with it there. So
yeah, man, I think, like you've been through so much evolution, in your career too, like doing, you went from full-time streaming to kind of online in person. Now you're full-time in person. And it's like, that's the biggest thing about this whole being an entrepreneur in this space is finding out what you're doing that's working the best and where your time is best spent. Because it's like when you start, you're kind of doing anything you can think of, trying to find income here, there. But then eventually you fill up your schedule till you're so full and you literally can't do everything, and you have to try and start cutting things out and figuring out, well, where is my time going to be best spent to have the best return on investment for me, and what do I kind of probably need to scale back on, cut out, and what do I need to maybe put more effort into and grow more. And that's one of the things people don't think about is when you have a job, you just show up to your 9 to 5, put in your hours, you get paid. But when you're, doing this for yourself, you're constantly trying to figure out how to, be more effective with your time, make more money per hour, per day, whatever it may be. And that's kind of a stage I feel like I'm still in. I'm still throwing darts at the boards. I'm trying a bunch of different things. Like we talked about, we're going to talk about vending a little bit. I'm going to be vending in Chicago for the first time. And so, it's just a combination of trying a million different things and seeing what you like doing, and then two, how to be most effective with your time doing the things you like doing. So
Yeah, and for me, I found that during the pandemic, I really loved streaming because there's a ton of people online and I had a huge community that I was able to build. But then, like, as people went back to work in the real world, a lot of that community, I had to do it at certain times of day, like, 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock when people were off work, the prime time, basically. And I found that even then, it wasn't the same as like the hype that was kind of during that time of like that crazy lockdown time. I mean, I don't think it was a good time at all, but for Pokemon, it was a fantastic time. And so, like, it was hard for me to kind of continue doing that. So I had to take some time away. Plus, at the time, I was not happy with Whatnot. Do you stream on Whatnot? You do YouTube mostly, right?
yeah, I tried Whatnot. They reached out. We had a partnership together, and they sponsor some of my streams, and I tried it out. And what happened was, it did go really good in the beginning. And here's the thing: I'm not gonna say anything bad about Whatnot. I like the platform, I like how it operates, the auction style, how you're able to do giveaways, just the whole app. Everything works great. Whatnot's great, right? I had no problems. Shipping was a little harder, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But one thing I noticed is once they kind of turned that faucet off and they stopped promoting the streams, the views went way down. Hard to get viewers because there's so many other streams in there. And I started to realize that, man, I'm actually taking less for these cards and packs than I would selling them myself on eBay or doing pack breaks on my own stream, and I'm paying them fees. And so it just didn't work out for me. Like, I think if you really, take the time and build a huge following and actually you can probably do well on Whatnot. A lot of people are, but it's just, I feel like it's few and far between to actually build a following and do well on there. But you had a following. So what did you not like about it?
Yeah, so when I specifically left, I found that personally I had the same issues. Even though I had a big following on there, I just felt like they were never promoting me. I wasn't one of the big top streamers at the time that was like going twice, cracking hits, Blake's breaks. It was like Skiplup. Like these were like four or five of the big names at that time that were always having 100 plus. Oh, Ryan's Card House was there at the time too. They would
Okay.
have over 100, 200 people in their streams, and then you'd have like 60 to 70 other people, like myself included, that would have less than 20 people in their streams. And it's hard to stream and like do auctions when you don't have the numbers to back it up. And so you then start running buy it nows, and then the buy it nows, it's hard to get people to stay in your stream because buy it nows aren't as exciting. You want to run auctions all the time to like, keep that kind of energy going. And once that energy kind of dies off, you're like, okay, guys, I'm losing money on these singles. Let's start doing buy it now. People just leave. They go to another stream where it's so like I was having personal problems kind of keeping up that momentum that I was able to do before without any promotion. And it was like because they started doing promotion on these big streams and these big guys I couldn't compete with. And at the same time, I was seeing some really shady stuff happening on the app because it was pre-regulation. And I made a huge video talking about like the three major reasons why I was leaving the platform. And I formally left the platform, made a YouTube video about it and everything. It was a year and a half ago, way before the Lakes Break stuff. And well, not way before. It was about 4 or 5 months before that happened and came out and broke. But I really kind of got out of it for my own mental health reasons. I just didn't see my business growing on that platform anymore at that time. But everything you said about it's true. Like, it's a fantastic platform. The way that it runs the auctions are smooth as silk. It's like, I mean, the way compared to other auction platforms, they're all clunky and there's always beta errors and things happening. Whatnot just runs really well. I personally thought the shipping on Whatnot was extremely streamlined as well. I thought that for the most part, the seller support was pretty good. Like when you had issues with buyers, the seller support would come in and be a intermediary and handle it for the most part. So I had nothing but good things to say about the platform behind the scenes like that. But I did have the ethical reasons for why I left and my own personal business reasons that I still believe the same thing. I don't think little guys on Whatnot can survive. I believe that they will get crushed by the bigger streams that they are promoting on whatnot that get better. I'll go. There's all kinds of stuff that goes into that. But what do
Yeah,
you
I'm
think?
really anxious to see how Ray, Shining Cars Collectibles does. He's taking it serious. I mean, I think he's up to like, I think he posted 8,000 followers. So like, I'm anxious to see if he can build up and become successful on it because he's really taking it serious. I didn't really get into taking it too serious because I saw really early it really wasn't what I wanted to do. Going back to what I just said, finding out what you actually want to do. I'm not as passionate about the single card auctions. Like, old school Pokemon's great at it. We got Weedles. We got, I'm not that guy. I don't want to just, oh, here's the card. Here it is. Bid. Like, I'm a pack opener. I like to open packs. It's like, it's actually fun for me at the same time as you can make some money on it. And so like, I wanted to be a pack opener and it seemed like a lot of the Whatnot audience was, at least what I was getting was much more directed to singles. And so and I was getting a lot more pack opener audience on my channel on YouTube. So that's another reason why I left it. It just wasn't what I was wanting to do.
Yeah, and for me, I did it for so long that I think I lost a little bit of that that pizzazz that came along with it. It was also right when Scarlet and Violet Base came out, so I was ripping Crown Zenith with reckless abandon for like months and months. And then Scarlet and Violet came out English, and it was cool, but the hype had seriously died down right at that point. So it was really difficult to like get anything that was exciting for people. Even then, Evolving Skies wasn't all that exciting for people at that point. So like it really wasn't enough to bring people to the stream. So I just went hard into the eBay. At that moment, I did like eBay rather than convention selling because it was an easy shift for me just to shift my inventory over to eBay. But then I really went hard into the convention selling like I've been doing now. And honestly, it's my favorite way to interact with the community. I love going to these shows for like 1 or 2 days a weekend, interacting for 8 hours at a time, just having that overload, buying a ton of cards. Like the best stuff comes to your table. You get to buy it at a significant discount. So pro tip number 1 for you, Alex. Here, we're going to start a little pro tip.
Oh, I do want to ask you one question before we get into the vending.
Sure.
Do you think a lot of the success is built around where you live? Like, do you think you could be as successful with it if you had to like actually travel to more shows and get hotels and all that?
That is a really good question. So for anyone listening and anyone who's watching, I live in the beautiful sunny state of California. I live in specifically Northern California in the Bay Area. I am within about an hour of Sacramento, the capital of the state, which is more towards the middle of the state. I'm an hour from San Francisco, which is on the coast, kind of in a little bay area. And there are many cities in between those two bigger cities and even farther out a little bit that have their own conventions on the weekly this time of year. So what Alex is referring to is my ability to go from weekend to weekend, show to show, and vend literally locally every single weekend if I wanted to. Pretty much every weekend. It's like 3 out of 4 weekends of a month. We get
because it's kind of the same up in like New Jersey, New York area too.
And the same would be true for like probably Florida or certain parts of Texas. If you're in a hot spot of the United States that's in a big city or like a metropolitan area, you probably have access to things like I do. I just drive an hour in any direction and I'm at a show. So that's what I do full time. And it's a great question. I don't think that if I lived in like the Midwest where I had one show per year and it was Collecticon that was my only option, or maybe like a little local comic book store that did a show that had like a few tables set up that didn't have a lot of foot traffic, I certainly would not be able to do what I do now, not in the capacity I did. But if I was already set up for vending and I knew and I had access to the Discord that I run that tells about all these other shows, Collecticons, these local shows that are worth traveling for, and I really wanted to, I do believe that if I got my cost of living down, I live somewhere like in Montana. Sorry for anyone in Montana. It's probably cheap there.
Or Missouri.
Or Missouri, yeah. And I had like a few $100s for a mortgage, like $500-$600 mortgage, and I had a really cheap. I don't know how cheap.
It's not that cheap here, Josh.
Okay, well, fair enough. It shows what I know. But if I had like $1,000 mortgage or a $1,200 mortgage, or maybe even a $1,500, I'm sitting here rocking over $2,000 for my little apartment, my rent. So Like for me in California, it's very expensive just to live. But like if I had a cheap cost of living and I could fly for like 100 or 200 bucks round trip, which is what the cost of tickets are to fly these days, if you get a good time price and everything. I do believe that you could make a living vending at the bigger shows, and just you would have to be a weekend warrior. You'd have to travel constantly. And if that's something you wanted to do, I think if you really buckled down, it would be potentially possible. I don't do that though. That's too much for me. I love traveling, but I like being able to go back to my own bed at night. That's one of the huge benefits of being local for sure.
All right, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of it. So, if you had to dream up this perfect scenario of you have this perfect inventory you're bringing to these shows, what would you be bringing? What should I be bringing to do the best at these shows? What would you say in terms of singles, slabs, sealed? What would it be?
All right, so starting off our little pro tip board here. This is a great question, and it's certainly something a lot of people ask. And I honestly don't think that the answer is good cards priced well. I think that's a very general answer that sure would apply to everything, but I think there's a more specific answer that would directly apply to this. And I have found in my vast experience, I wish I had all my lanyards. I have a ton of them over there, but ready to go so I could just hold them up for clout. But in my vast hundreds of shows experience at this point, I believe that from that experience, the best cards that sell are between the $40 and $200 range in the graded department. So, for me, it's all PSA. I cannot sell BGS, CGC, SGC, AGS. I look at all of those things as their raw price, raw near mint or raw light played, moderately played, depending on the grade. And so I personally deal 100% almost. Well, I say almost because I'll take trades for like Beckett's and Black Labels sometimes, but it's more likely that I'm going to deal in a PSA card that's under $200 than I'm going to trade for like a Beckett card that's like worth $1,000+. And I always love, and I personally recommend, if you're going to be looking at selling and wanting to be liquid with it, looking at what Alex said and doing ultra modern. Ultra modern, for whatever reason, there's all kinds of these like theories for why. I think there's valid reasons for why it moves the quickest, but it's the most popular and it's the thing that people are going to ask about the most. And it gets the most free advertising from everyone and their mother talking about it on the YouTube sphere, on the Pokemon is pushing it. They're the ones who are making like ads for it at the time. So the most modern set is usually going to be the most asked about. So having ultra modern really helps too. So like $40 to $200 cards and ultra modern. That's what I would recommend.
What about is that singles too? What about singles?
As far as singles are concerned, you can get away with a lot more. I personally deal with, and I'm getting an echo again here too. Chat's saying echo, and I'm actually hearing it too. So I'll try to deal with that after I answer this. Singles, as far as I'm concerned, are a little bit more forgiving. You can go high end on the singles, and you can go low end. Like I have a dollar binder, and I have a $50 to $100 section of raw cards that I keep in my case that are just in top loaders, just raw. And those are mostly going to be vintage cards and alternate arts. The binders are for cheap stuff, and I like having those out for kids and people to kind of look through and just make little stacks and get dollar cards. But you're not going to make a lot of money doing that. So I don't think people should really focus on the really cheap stuff, especially if you're traveling. So what are you going to bring? Like, what kind of stuff do you have planned to bring so far? And I'm going to try to mess with my settings a little bit while you do that.
Yeah, I mean, so I really don't have singles. I don't keep singles, especially since I moved away from more of the bulk buying on TCG Player and the eBay buys. I don't really have ever any singles because literally every card I buy now I grade because, like I said, I go to local card shops or local card shows. And I'm one of those guys that I'll sit there at the booth and I'll hold up to the light and I'll see if it has any whiting or if it's centered and all that. And I make sure that every card that I actually buy, I'm buying to grade. So other than like opening packs, I just don't have a lot of singles. And the collections I buy out are all sealed collections. I really don't buy out a lot of singles collections because I don't want to be in the business of selling raw singles, especially if I'm not doing shows. I don't want to have a bunch of raw listings on eBay, and those are the cards that people always want a million pictures of. They're always going to complain about the conditions. And I just want the business to flow as easy as possible. And that's why I don't also do a lot of deals on like Instagram or Facebook groups, is because I don't want to take the time to go back and forth with people and negotiate and all that. I throw it buy it now listing on eBay, no best offer accepted. I'll get messages all the time, people offering things. Most of the time I just don't respond to anybody on eBay, and I'll just let them sit, and when they sell, I pack them up and ship them, and it's a nice easy clean transaction, no real time investment on my end except the original listing. And so that's kind of how I've been selling, these days. And a lot of my sealed product, if I don't keep it, I open on stream. So what I was thinking I was going to bring, that's basically all I have, man. Like 90% of my slabs are all $40 to $200, modern, ultra modern. And then I was going to bring just some of the higher end sealed stuff, some XY Sun and Moon boxes, and then maybe bring some all the modern packs and get like one of those pack dispensers and just have like the popular packs, like maybe some 151 and Crown Zenith, Shrouded Fable, Twilight, and just sell some packs there too. Maybe even like have a Rip Till You Hit game, like maybe I get into some of that stuff. And so it was really going to be like mostly like packs and sealed, and then those ultra modern PSA cards. What do you think? Think I'll do okay?
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. You're gonna have a hard time doing a rip till you hit game unless you have some sort of a figured out system. It's gonna clog up your table because you only have one table, right? Oh, you're muted. Is that my? Oh,
go ahead.
You good? Okay, cool.
No, I should have took that second table that the green shiz offered, and I didn't take it. I should have took it and just set up some other stuff there.
Okay, pro tip number 2 for you. Oh wow, really echoey. Hold on, let me change.
You were just good a second ago.
Yeah. I changed something and that helped, so I'm going to do that now. Change it back. Okay. Pro tip number 2 for you. The thing that people don't realize with one table is that you're going to have a lot of people who want to stop at the table and kind of just look and stuff, but people won't want to stand in line and wait. So the more that people stop and look at something that you don't want them to buy, that's just kind of there to kind of eat up the time and get their eye candy there, or the more time they're there at the table, the less money you're going to make at the convention. And that's counterintuitive because you think you want the people to spend as much time at your table as possible. No, you want them to see what they want at the table, buy it quickly, and be on their way. Have their transaction be boom, 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 wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Done and over in like a minute to 2 minutes. And one way that you can transact quicker and more efficiently is instead of using your phone to use like Venmo, PayPal, and scan and everything, just make a quick little printout on a sheet of paper, a color printout with your logo and a couple of QR codes that take to PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, all your payment processing, and then also throw in a Discord and maybe a YouTube link as well. And put that on your table so people can scan it and pay you without you having to physically take the payment from them with your phone. You could be doing 2 to 3 things at once and get payment. So pro tip, scan and make a little QR code. It's free to do online. Just put in free QR code generator and put that at your table with your logo, and you can do that for free just printing it out.
That's huge. That's actually profound. Now, is that kind of all you have? PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, is that good enough?
I personally also include another thing is a Square Reader. It's like it's an app that's owned by Microsoft. It's been around forever. They used to have to plug into your phone and you can swipe someone's credit card with it. The application has actually gotten so advanced now that if you just download it and jump through the hoops and fill out the paperwork that it needs you to, you can use their service for basically free for like a 2.2% processing fee. And you can tap cards on your phone without a card reader because most cards have the tap ability or they have the ability to like just digitally take payment. And you can even take payment from people's iPhones directly, like phone to phone, if you have some sort of an iPhone, Apple Pay, or anything like that set up. And I highly recommend getting all of it set up because you will lose hundreds, if not possibly thousands of dollars worth of sales by not having some sort of payment processing set up. And these are all free things. Besides the Square that we talked about, that's only like a 2%. It's like a 2%, 2.2% fee though. So I honestly think it's worth it just to be able to take those credit cards and the card reading. Because honestly, you don't want to lose a sale because you can't take the money from them. So that would be, I would recommend all of those things, and they're all free.
No, I appreciate it, man. Yes, it's good advice.
And for anyone listening, it's not hard to sign up. The Square Reader, you can sign up as a business and you get some additional benefits and tax write offs and those types of things that you probably will need for your business. But if it's just for personal use, you can also sign up as a personal use too. So it's not like this big thing you have to have all this paperwork to do. Like you give them your information, you link your bank account, you give them your personal information, and it sets you up, and it's a pretty simple thing. So highly
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yeah, you know what? Now I need to do that stuff anyway. Like, about crypto. Do you do crypto at all?
I don't take crypto. I took crypto during the pandemic, but that is long and ago. That is not a thing anymore. I do not do crypto. It's just not really something I'm comfortable with as much as it moves, and I don't know anything about like crypto wallets or anything like that. So I stay away from it. So
Yeah.
pro tip number 3, though. So moving on to the next pro tip, that this is something that a lot of people don't realize, but you're not going to get great deals walking around trying to find cards at vendors' tables for various reasons. You're going to maybe get cards that have already been picked through by the vendors because they grade and they're more savvy than the average collector, or you're going to have to pay more prices because they're at a show. They want show prices and they're not willing to go to 80% and kind of come down to your level. And so the best thing you can do as a vendor is just not even worry about other vendors. You let your customers come to you, and just every time you have a customer that you see as a binder or if they have cards, ask them if they're selling anything, and they will literally sell cards to you. You can typically, the average price you get for it as a vendor is at about 70 to 80% market value. So that's just a 20% discount for people walking up to you. You don't have to go anywhere, picking and choosing through cards, and then you can take those cards that you want to buy from them, and they can trade for inventory that you have at the table, and you don't actually have to cash out anyone. It's just like a trade value thing. So everyone wins in that situation. So highly recommend putting on your logo buying and selling cards, or sell me your cards, or some little thing that says you want to buy cards from people.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's obviously going to be a big part of it. That's kind of why I go to CollectCons. Is I do a lot of sourcing. I mean, some of the biggest plays I've made, grading wise, have been sourcing at Collecticon. I mean, especially like XY, Sun and Moon cards, where it's very hard to find those ever in the wild. Like those are the things you can find at shows and actually find mint copies that people are getting rid of, especially the bigger stores that have tons of singles that they just don't grade, or it's kind of wild to me that those things are still out there. But had very good luck with that. So hopefully I'll have that kind of stuff come to the table as well, though, you never know. But yeah, definitely take advantage of selling at 100% and taking their trades at 80% is definitely one of the big things. But honestly, man, it's really just about having the experience. I've been to multiple CollectCons now. I just wanted to vend once to see how it is. I was going to go anyway. And so it's just like, well, I might as well be stuck behind a table for one of these and see how the other side of it is.
It's such a good experience. I think honestly, anyone in this hobby, if you sell cards on eBay and you have some sort of an inventory and you're not just like a pure collector who doesn't ever sell cards, I think it's worth the experience to go and do it and have a table. It might not be for you every time, and it may not end up being a very like profitable endeavor for your first time because you just don't know what you're doing. But I think it's a worthwhile endeavor just to see what it's like. And honestly, it gives you a home base, so you get to go in early, skip the lines. You get to be a vendor with like the vendor like lanyard on, and so other vendors give you a bit of a deal sometimes because of that when you're at the con. So it's just a fun thing to do once in your life. So I've always been an advocate for it, and I think anyone should do. Someone in the chat asked me if I would ever if I would ever sell merchandise. This is my hat that I wear at all the cons, and so you can probably smell the hat from where you're at because it goes to every convention with me. No, I'm just kidding. It smells fine. I Febreze it once in a while. It's all good. No, but if anyone ever comes up to me, they always ask me, hey, where can I buy one of those hats? I want that hat so bad. So I really, really want, and I've been looking into this, looking to manufacture, not a Magikarp hat, but a generic carp fish hat that I could sell at the conventions and have like my own Bulbasaur thing. So then when people wear the Magikarp hat, I have my little logo on the side and they have the Magikarp hat, and it's like hey, you're like an old card shop kind of guy, and so it could be like a logo, and people would like it, be silly, and but so if anyone has any manufacturers in China or India or over the border somewhere in another country that I'm unaware of, Indonesia, anywhere like that, I would love, no joke, any of those places, if you know someone who manufactures, please hit my DMs up, because I've been looking all over and it's really kind of hard to get in contact with those companies.
I mean, man, like I don't think they're that serious about their copyright. I mean, or else they would have went after Bulbasaur by now. I mean, you could probably honestly just make that exact same hat and sell them, and they wouldn't come after you.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried about them like coming after me for it, because like it said, it's not a Magikarp hat. It's going to be a generic goldfish hat, you know? And who are they to say? And like you said with Bulbasaur, they clearly don't care at all, because those things are all over the place. I don't know if they're just derpy enough to like get by the trademark issue, but it is brilliant marketing on that man's part. I think that he does a great job with his videos, but one of the best things he's been able to do is branding with that shirt, and the way he can both sell it for a profit and make money doing it, and advertise for himself and have a cool, sick shirt that people just want to wear because it looks like a great shirt that even if you don't know who he is, you like the shirt. Like, it's honestly a great gimmick, and I think it's something that I would love to emulate. So, like, props to him for that.
For sure, man. Hey, I want to touch on something we talked about before stream. So, how much like lighter do you feel? How much like at ease do you feel after telling me you've really taken a step back from watching all the PokeTube content and you really just been focusing on you, your family, your business, your new dog, your new wife, all that? Like, how much better does it feel being out of the Pokesphere is serious for a little bit?
I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that when you're into anything for so long, and I've been into this hobby so in depth since 2019, like literally nonstop. When I'd get off of my day job, when I had a day job, I would be on my day job waiting to get off so I could go buy more Pokemon cards like in person, or go hunt Walmart for Hidden Fates tins or whatever it was at the time that I was looking for. And so, like, I've been so engaged and involved with Pokemon for so dang long that taking that time that the last 3 months, I have not been engaged at all. I have done my podcast and my weekly conventions that I sell out, but I don't really watch any other Pokemon content. And it really is, like you said, has been so much more of like a freeing sensation. That's not to say that there's not great content. Like, I see that you've been posting a bunch of content. That's why I wanted to catch up with you and actually have this chat. Just be like, see what the hell's been going on with you. Because, like, I feel like we're friends, and when I don't keep up with my friends' content, I don't know what they've been up to. So it's kind of meaningful to me to once in a while have these chats, and I don't get to see you often enough. So, like, this is kind of nice to do. But yeah, man, it's hard. I think anyone who's watching, if you just only watch Pokemon content constantly and just go, especially if you're into like the drama side of it sometimes, which I was never as much into that, so that wasn't really my issue. I wasn't getting negative content. I was just getting burnt out. But if you are into that kind of content, it can probably get a little bit tiresome at times. So I'd take a step back. It's great, man. There's nothing wrong with it, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, is that what you've been doing too? Kind of just mostly doing your own thing, and I really think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone I've stopped by, like at least one of their videos, like your videos, like at least every couple of weeks, I'll just pop in and see what you guys are saying, or I know like the Green Shiz is in the chat. I'll stop in and I know he's selling off his Zapdos collection right now, or like I pay attention. Like I know Rattle and Opossum and Chloe.
Green Shiz, I'm following his Zapdos collection like it's my own collection. I want to know what happens to that dang black label, the Kurzap, or what are the German black label or whatever that he has. I need to know. Anyone watching, go follow the Green Shiz and go follow his auctions and bid on his auctions, because I am living vicariously through that man selling off his entire collection.
Yeah.
It is wild to see. Like,
but I mean, same thing. I just been like stopping in, like spacing on the name. What do they call it? Old school Pokemon and Catch 'em All. What do they call their podcast?
Pokeflips.
Yeah, Pokeflips. I don't know why I couldn't think of that, but I'll stop in there once in a while, and then obviously like on Instagram, I'll see people on the whatnot, or stopping in an old school Pokemon's eBay live to see how it's going. So I just try to keep up with it, but I'm not engaged like you said, like I used to be. Like I'm not watching every content, every video. I'm not like worried about what he said, she said, what the comments are saying, and all these debates and drama. Like stepping back from that and just kind of like peering in every once in a while. It's been so much more relaxing and enjoyable, and it's made the hobby a lot more fun. I will say that.
Yeah, and honestly, right now, I feel like the hobby has been in a bit of a weird place. Like, I feel like I'm really excited for what's coming, but it's been a little bit kind of like the ripping. I haven't ripped a pack since 151 came out. I haven't. I know you rip packs all the time with the pack ripping, but like for myself, do you actually still rip packs for yourself ever, like just for fun, or are you mostly just all for the experience, like for the online thing?
So I do like a box of each new set, or
Okay.
me and my wife will each open a box, and then like if it's like the end of the stream and there's like a few booster boxes that have like one or two packs left in each, I'll just finish them off and open them, stuff like that. But yeah, other than just those few little bits pieces, not a ton, man, not a ton.
I really want another set to come out that makes me want to open it because I wanted to open 151 English, and that was the last one that did that for me. And before that was Crown Zenith. And before
Yes.
Crown Zenith, it was Brilliant Stars, I think. I really liked Brilliant Stars. And then there were good sets in the Sword and Shield block that I wanted to hit. A lot of those I wanted to open. But, like, in the Scarlet Violet sets, I don't think there's any set that I'm thinking, like, yeah, I want to rip this pack just for fun because I don't care what I'm going to get. I'm interested in the chase. Like, I just buy singles now. I'm so boring. And, like, that's what I tell people at these shows, too. Whenever they're like, oh, what pack should I get? Because I sell packs to rip, too. I'm so lame. I'm not a good salesman about it. I'm like, you probably should just buy the singles. I literally tell people like I don't rip packs. So I think the next set I'll be excited about though will be this the Team Rocket set as long as they don't mess it up. Do you have faith in them not to mess up the Team Rocket set? What do you think about it?
Um, I have faith in it if it's a regular set, if it's a booster box set. If they somehow make that a specialty set, I don't know what it is, man. I know 151 is doing extremely well. Like 151 is blasting off like 70 in ETB. The UPCs and PC ETBs are just absolutely crazy. So it's doing very well, right? But even like Crown Zenith, after that reprint, it's sticking right at $50. Like Hidden Fates, one of the most popular sets ever. It's still stuck in those higher hundreds. It can't break 200. And then all the other specialty sets, like Celebrations, did well at the beginning. Then it's been stagnant for years. And everything else has just been really steady. So I'm really kind of in between on my specialty set investing and if I really want to go deep on those. So I think if it's a booster box set, I don't really think they can mess it up. I mean, as long as they have dark Pokemon and it's got, they already showed it's probably gonna have Mewtwo and it'll have other popular species. I'm sure it's gonna do amazingly well if it's a booster box set. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that that's a no-brainer. Like, all they have to do is bring back the dark Pokemon. What I'm hoping for is a little bit more than that, I guess. I am hoping that they bring back something else, like maybe Gold Star Pokemon. I've been out here saying that for a while, and I feel like it's the perfect opportunity for them. The Team Rocket Returns set was the first set that they introduced Gold Stars in the EX era with the Torchic, Mudkip, and Trico. Those are the first ever Gold Stars. And this would be a poetic, it's like poetry, it rhymes. It would be perfect if they just maybe reintroduced Gold Stars at the end in the Rocket era. So if they didn't do that, I'm not going to say it's a failure, but I would like a little more than just another mainline set with dark Pokemon.
Yeah,
Like
people
that.
don't talk about that. Like Team Rocket introduced two crazy things. Like that was the first secret rare in English, is that Raichu. And then the first Gold Stars, like Team Rocket's always kind of introduced something new. So yeah, if they're going to introduce something, it would make sense to do it with Team Rocket. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, and I feel like this era we haven't really been introduced anything to like the Terra Pokemon or the Rainbow bordered like the new ones that are coming out, Terapagos. That's kind
Yeah.
of a new thing, but just like with VMAX and V Star, I feel like there's gonna be something else. Like they gave us the gold alternate art Giratina, the gold like the connecting four artwork in Crowns in it. I don't know if we're gonna get four sets worth of gold stars, but maybe in one set, just the best set, like the Team Rocket set, maybe we get a few gold stars to chase or something, and then that's it. So I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
still waiting for the other shoe to drop with Scarlet and Violet. I have not invested any in Scarlet and Violet, and I wouldn't be comfortable putting any money right now in any sort of booster box besides the base set.
I believe the
Yeah.
base set's already gotten a reprint, and it's already about as cheap as it's going to be. But I probably wouldn't dump money in any other set besides that, because I do feel like any other set is such a reprint worry that it's you have a chance to really lock up your money there for many years to come, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, another thing like Scarlet Violet's kind of been yet to do is come up with that like that special thing, right? Like every other era has had something special. Like even even XY, like nothing crazy special, but at least they had megas. I mean, megas were new, right? That was a new concept, full art megas. And then Sun and Moon, obviously with the tag teams. Yeah, the gold borders.
Yeah, that's new.
And then like in Sun and Moon, they had tag teams, but they also had Shining Legends, which was cool. They brought back Shinings, and so like Sun and Moon has some cool stuff. Like Sword and Shield, the alt arts, obviously, trainer galleries became really big. Like I just don't think Scarlet Violet's really like latched on to something new and exciting yet. It's just like they came out with special illustration rares, and that's just been kind of the game plan for every set so far as the main hit. So hopefully this new rainbow, texture border thing might be a thing. And hopefully, like you said, Team Rocket will come out with something new, but I think they need a new gimmick. They need something new to come out in these sets.
Yeah, and that's what I've been waiting for. Like we really didn't have anything in the early part of Sword and Shield, and the only reason that it really stomped off was because of the lockdown and everyone just wanting anything. So they're chasing rainbow rares, for God's sakes.
Oh yeah, and Sun and Moon also introduced rainbow rares.
Yeah, and people loved them in Sun and Moon. I thought the rainbow rares in Sun and Moon were chef's kiss. They were fantastic. It was like the whole Sun and Moon thing. It was of the era. If they would have stopped doing them after Sun and Moon, they would have been a whole nother story. But now we got too many years of them and nobody likes them. No, I did want to actually quickly go to something I saw in the chat, though, just to take a quick little aside and talk to you about it. But have you seen anything at GameStop about slabs being sold? Because I actually, for the first time, looked at the website and I want to see what the slabs are selling for. And I found they're selling for about 70% market, which is really strong, honestly, for a lot of things. But have you sold anything to GameStop so far?
I haven't. People in my Discord have posted their sales, and they've been extremely good. Like people have been offloading their 8s and 9s to GameStop and getting basically more than they would get selling it themselves, taking fees and shipping on eBay. And so it's definitely a good out right now for certain slabs. People, here's the thing, how like the media is on YouTube, like people will take some niche card that never sells and they'll bring it there and they'll say $5 and then they'll make a whole video about it saying, can you believe it? They only offered $5 for this card? It's like, yeah, because there's no sales data. If you bring any ultra modern card that has tons of sales data every day, you're going to get a legitimate offer.
They're offering $515 on the Greninja Twilight Masquerade card, which is, I have one in a PSA 10. I just want to see what they'd offer for it. They're paying pretty strong on that. That's like almost 100% market on that card.
Is it really? Wow.
It's like a $550 card. I saw an auction in for like $525. So like the fact that they're paying that strong is pretty crazy. On the Van Gogh Pikachus, they're paying like $198. Like what? That's wild. Or like 190 something. I think it's like 96 or 98 bucks, which is
no risk, no shipping.
Yeah, there's no fees. They just cash you out in Vending mode. So like even if you can't go to a convention and you can't get eBay, like right now some cards, are kind of okay. Like you could kind of dump them at GameStop and you wouldn't be in the worst position. Like you don't want to dump everything though, because like they are going to lowball you on some things, and you just got to keep that stuff and kind of put it on eBay. But
yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I think it's definitely worth looking into if you have a whole bunch of slabs to get rid of. Like I said, like I don't really fall into that category much anymore. I get very little anything under a 9 anymore because I don't know. I'm just so critical of everything I take now because I just want to, I tend rate to be high. I don't want to have to sell off a bunch of 9s. I don't want to sell off singles that aren't gradable. And so like I don't have large amounts of slabs that like don't move. Like any of the extra slabs I have are just like copies of what I already have listed. If I have like 2, 3, 4, I just put one on the market and put the rest in like backstock. But yeah, anyone who does like just grade in mass, like, I'm sure you probably grade more than me. I know Retro grades way more than me. Like anyone like that, it makes a lot of sense. I get it to clear up inventory. Yeah. Like I might send in my normal month is like 1 to 2 orders, and those orders might be anywhere from like 40 to 60 cards. So like, 50 to 100, I'd say let's say 50 to 80, 90 cards is a normal month for me. Nothing crazy.
That's about what I send. I actually only do about 50 to maybe 100 is a lot for me. Like if I do
Okay.
50 in a month, I'm probably good for that month. I won't want to send another submission. But about 50 is kind of like a lot. And if I'm doing that monthly, I'll have plenty of inventory. Because like I have one table. I'm the kind of guy who I don't want to expand to 3, 5, 7, 10 tables. I want to keep it a one-man show. I want to keep it lean, mean. I want to really sell my inventory, keep the inventory I like that I know is going to sell, and use that and really refine it. Rather than add more space, I'd rather just kind of refine what I have and make it better. So I feel like if I keep it that way, I can then start traveling more and maybe doing more of these big shows, and maybe making it a little bit more regular in the off season. Because one thing about the summertime is there's always shows, but once like January hits, the holidays hit, it's going to start slowing down. Like you're going to get one show per month or something, and it's kind of going to be, sales going to slow down a little bit. And I like to have the ability to travel and go to other shows that way. So definitely looking at like making myself better rather than expanding a ton of inventory and just grading a ton of things. Because like you said, 9s don't sell. It's literally only 1s and 10s. I can only sell PSA 1s and PSA 10s. Those are the only thing that sells. And sometimes vintage 9s. Vintage 9s will sell too.
I appreciate you turning me on to that too. I just sold a PSA 1 Crystal Guardians Charizard. I've sold multiple base set ones. Like I do look for just like terrible condition ones now, and I'll buy them. You know, if I can get them at damaged prices. That's funny. But no, one of the things you said is you know, like staying a one man operation, keeping it small to manage yourself. Like that is so like underappreciated, and you know, we living in America, all capitalistic, all you know, if you're not growing, you're dying, all that stuff.
Bigger.
Yeah, it's like, you know, when everyone wants to get online and show their sales numbers. I did 1 point whatever million in sales or whatever. It's like, dude, there's something to be said saying, you know, enough to be able to do it yourself, not having employees, not being overworked to where you're spending your whole life on the business. You're working 12-hour, 14-hour days and always, you know, doing this and that and growing. And so like that needs to be talked about more, I feel like, is getting to a sustainable size where you're making a living, you're enjoying your life, making a living, doing what you love. And you're not, you know, getting to a point where you hate it, you're overworked, you're always stressed about growing bigger and bigger. And then like you get too big, you got to hire an employee. Now you're stressed about that employee. The employee quits on you. Now you can't even get everything done because you have too much work now for one person because you have enough to afford an employee. And it just becomes a mess. So it's like, I applaud everyone who has businesses and card shops and employees and stuff. But at the same time, it's like, you know, the people that don't, it's not always because they're just not good businessmen or they're not smart enough to grow. It's they just don't want to.
Yeah, there's something to be said. I mean, I think it's funny that the person who mostly talks about the whole parable of the Mexican fisherman on YouTube is a big banker, and he's the richest guy that I know in the hobby pretty much. And so I think it's really funny hearing my man Dan, my main man, Catch 'em All Collectibles, my homie. He's a good friend in the hobby, but he's a rich man. And he often talks about the concept of enough. And I've always been one who's into like philosophy and like thinking about like what the point of doing anything is. Like, what is the point of what you're doing as a person? I always like to have intention behind anything I'm doing, even if it's not like the same intention as like my neighbor. It's intention for what you're doing. And so I feel like it's very important to know what is enough. And that's not to say that I'm not trying to grow. Like, I definitely would love to grow, but growth just for growth's sake isn't necessarily always a good thing. And there's definitely something to be said about knowing when is enough and what is enough, and like when to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and focus on your family and focus on your health. And then maybe when you want to maybe go a little harder on it, you can then turn the gas up and then focus more that way. So
well, another thing is growth in terms of like business size and sales doesn't always mean growth in actual income you're taking home, right? Because as you grow and you're continuing to take on more risks, build employees, like take on more, you're incurring more expenses. And so those expenses aren't always outweighed right away. Like you have to do enough growth to actually outweigh those expenses and produce the same salary you were making before and then eclipse your old salary. And, you know, then you have to grow more and more. And so like, these are just things people don't think about a lot. I see Pokey NE in the chat. Like he's talked about it before. Like he's kind of got to a size where he's comfortable and he doesn't really want to grow anymore. And like, you know, like you said with Dan, like, and a lot of people, you know, and I find myself like, you know, when you're competitive as just naturally competitive person, you want to grow, right? You're like, oh man, I want to get to that level of sales. I want to build. But then you start doing it and you're just like, man, I don't know how much all those guys are working, but I already feel like I'm working a lot. I don't really want to get to that level. I'm pretty happy here. Like, you got to rethink, like, why am I doing this? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because I hated where I used to work and I wanted to do something I actually loved and produce an income and produce a lifestyle that I actually enjoy. You did it. You're there. You made it. Comparisons are the thief of joy, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things I think a lot of people just in the world don't really know what it is that they want or what makes them happy. And when they are actually happy, they can't identify it as well, or they're not like content with that. They think, oh, now I'm happy. I need the next thing to get even happier. And it's like, I've always been of the belief that like you can be a maximum amount of happy. Like you can be probably happier in some regards. Maybe you can have a better situation at work, maybe a better situation at home, or all these things that maybe you don't like your current diet you're on, but you're doing it because your doctor said that you have to, so you don't like that. But there are always things that could be worse, you know? So, but I think that there is a maximum level of happiness too. And at least being able to not say when you're at that maximum level, but to identify when you are happy and really revel in that and live in it and take advantage of it is something to be said. So like, I mean, this isn't a philosophy stream or anything, but with Pokemon, we can overwork ourselves, especially if you're a business in this space, because it is a hobby. It's something that we consider that we love. And I personally, I really consider myself lucky to be able to do something that I love and not, and like be able to take it into my workspace and not have it be like a bad thing per se, and still be profitable and me to enjoy my life. It's very, I consider myself lucky for that. But it's one of those things that could all fall apart if I didn't do it right, or if I wasn't planning correctly, or if I tried to grow too much and I got greedy and things all fell apart, you know? So when something's working and it's working well, there's nothing wrong with continuing to do that and just leaning a little more into it, a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I mean, that's kind of what my philosophy has been for a long time. But yeah, especially with lately, with getting a puppy and getting married, I've had to take a little time stepping away, and so I've sort of set myself up to be able to do that as well.
Well, and like you said, not to get like too philosophical on it, but it's like I think people need to celebrate like their accomplishments and they're reaching their goals more. Like it's too easy in this space to constantly like look at who's doing better. Like, you know, I mean, I'm sure you get the same messages I do. I get so many messages like, hey, you know, I know I'm not as big as you, or I know I'm not doing as big as you are, but you know, I did this and I got that, I made this much, and you know, it's like they're almost like already feeling like not like lesser than, because like their accomplishments aren't as good as other people's accomplishments. Like, no, guys, like every accomplishment you make that you set out to do and you reached your goal, like that should be celebrated. Like if you created a business and you're doing it full time, like no matter if someone else is doing it more bigger than you or more than you or whatever, like you've already accomplished the goal. Now you can get to the next goal or whatever that is for you. But like, just stop trying to compare to everyone else out there or thinking like your level of accomplishment isn't good enough because someone else got a bigger accomplishment. It's like you said, you're missing the point. The point is creating happiness, not creating the biggest, you know, number in your bank account or biggest number on the sales chart, you know?
So what is something in this hobby that you enjoy doing that makes you happy? Because I have an answer for you that I just did something yesterday that I hadn't done in a while, and it gave me a certain level of joy that I hadn't experienced in a long time. And I want to hear, is there something you can think of that just like gives you joy in this hobby?
Right here, man. Dude, talking to you, talking to everyone else on these live streams, like it's that and opening. And I do love the pack breaks. Like, it's one of those things I said, like you have a job where you do what you love. Like I love opening packs. I'm not rich enough to be able to open that many packs on my own. And so when I can open packs for other people, I truly actually love the pack break streams. I didn't love the single selling. I didn't like that. I like the pack breaks and I like getting on camera, talking to all you guys, going to collecticons, you know, seeing people in person, hanging out. Like that stuff's probably the most fun for me in the hobby. What about you?
Okay, so something that I always enjoyed doing is I like collecting cards in a weird way. When I like a card, I don't just buy one PSA 10 of that card or one card to put in the binder or whatever. I usually buy a bunch of that card. So, like, one example is this. Where This binder here is one of my previous endeavors of.
So you don't buy these to grade or to invest in. You buy them like for yourself.
Yeah. So when I like a card and I think a card is undervalued, I will literally buy a whole binder's worth of that card. Typically,
is that all that EV?
Yeah, that's all. 72 card EVs in here of that promo EV. This is my first buyout card I ever did. And so I just made a little mini buyout yesterday that I did for the first time in many months. And I bought out a card on TCG Player. And that is something that gives me a certain amount of joy that for some weird reason is not to per se to grade. Yeah, I'll take a couple of them and grade some of the better ones, but it is not with that intention. I just like buying a million of one single thing that I like. I won't buy anything else of any other card or anything, but one single thing when I like it, I'll just go and buy it out. And I did one of those yesterday on TCG Player. And yeah, that was just something that I found joy about. That is something that is very unique to the hobby that I feel like, I don't know, does anyone else in the chat, not for monetary reasons, but do you get a certain amount of joy buying out cards and getting a bunch of a single card and just having a bunch, or am I a weirdo? For like wanting, am I like a dragon who wants to like hoard his gold and just like sleep on it? Like I feel like that's got to be a little weird, but at the same time, someone's got to relate to that.
That's awesome, man. So is it just Pokemon, or do you have a Magic binder like that too?
Just Pokemon. I personally, my Magic collecting habits are far different than my Pokemon collecting habits. For Pokemon, it's pure collecting. If I'm gonna collect something, it's because I love it. For Magic, it's pure utility. And so with my Magic collection, I'm never going to buy anything else for it except for a couple cards here and there to add to my collection. But anyone who's watching, do you know what Elder Dragon Highlander or Commander or EDH is? It's a format in Magic that is a multiplayer format where you play with your friends, and it's very casual. You have 100 cards in your deck. You can only have one card in per copy per deck. And it's very like a fun, loose, casual way of playing. And so I built 17 different decks. 17. One of every color combination, and then one of all 5 colors, and then one with no colors, which is called an artifact deck. And I made them all balanced within themselves so that my friends and I, who I grew up with, can go back to our childhood, pull out these 2 boxes that I have, and play a game from when we were like only using cards from a certain age when we were like 6 to 15 years old, and play EDH games and go back to that time and place. And so it's a nostalgic, a boxed set that I made with Magic cards that I never have to buy anymore. I'm perfectly content with it. I once in a while I'll swap out a card. I'll put like a cool old card in that I didn't have growing up that I went and bought now that I wanted to add to the decks. Make it thematic or something, but sorry, I won't lose anyone else with Magic.
Dude, I love it, man. Like we should do that for like a Collecticon, like build a decks with just like base, jungle, and fossil. Just base, jungle, fossil decks, and we're gonna play a Pokemon game like it used to be played all that time ago.
Dude, that's what got me back in, like, so before Pokemon Go boomed in 2016, one of the things that got me back into Pokemon was my friends and I, who I was in a house living with, like, you know, I was in one of those, like, 4-bedroom, 6 people living in the house, like college, 20-something-year-old revolving door houses where we're all same age, kind of going to community college together, hanging out together, friends, maybe not friends with some of them, a little awkward at times, you know, but we all got our collections together, and we got them all, brought them to the house, we pooled them together, and we made decks, like you just said, with like Fossil, Jungle, Base, and Neo, and I think the farthest we went, no one had any e-reader cards. And we made decks, and we played. And the one thing we determined when we were playing is it's like Poison is overpowered as hell. So we actually played a lot of Pokemon, like you just said, and that was one of the things we did like Pokemon Go boom that we had fun with when I was like 20 years old.
All the original stuff's fun. Like going back and like trying to make like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck with like the first few sets. Like it sounds fun. It's like everything has got so blown out of proportion where it's like so optimized and everyone knows every possible new meta. And it's just like, I don't know, man. It doesn't like seem as fun to me to like jump in and try to learn the games now. But I would enjoy going back and playing like old school sometime.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I did what I did with my Magic decks, is I really wanted something that we could go back to and like really enjoy from a time that made sense to me, because I was losing track of the modern Magic stuff. I was playing a little bit competitively, but I couldn't keep up with set after set when I was in high school. Like, you just don't have the time or money when you're that age. You're doing too many other things. And like, you have to really be on it to be good. So I quit playing like competitively, but I always wanted to keep that casual love intact. So my 20-year-old mind was like, okay, I'm gonna make these decks, and I'm gonna be like, they're gonna be perfect. I'm gonna make them perfect balanced. So one deck isn't like stronger than the others. Someone doesn't always want to go for the blue deck or the black deck or the white deck or whatever it is. They're all equal as much as I could. It's just a preference thing, and I did it as best as I could to kind of tap into that nostalgia. So it's really kept me from wanting to dip into my Magic, like my funds for Magic, though, because like I feel like I don't need anything else with Magic. I feel like my collection is totally fine. I don't need anything else. It's complete. They can keep adding more cards, and I wouldn't need a single one. So I don't think that's for everyone, but it works for me.
I like it. I like it. If I was a Magic player, I'd play with you.
Are you, besides sealed investing, do you have any sort of a collection, like a weird collection that you like to, that you have of like PSA cards?
I mean, I'm trying to complete the SIR collection, so I'm at, because I didn't really do anything like that in Sword and Shield. So I just been trying to, every single SIR I'm trying to have like promo or regular. And I'm trying to grade them all myself. And so I probably have about 80% of them so far. And so that's kind of my goal through Scarlet Violet era, is to have every SIR. But nothing like crazy like that. Like I have some old like binders, like random like things I used to play with like friends when I was a kid, like Star Wars, one of the Star Wars trading card games I have in a binder, and like old Yu-Gi-Oh binders, but like nothing crazy. No. I'm working now on trying to complete my XY and Sun and Moon box sets that I sold off during the pandemic. I'm trying to like slowly get them back with like collections here and there, and like if I buy a big collection, I'm gonna keep a couple and like sell the rest off to pay for it, and just try to like build it back up. But nothing like kind of too like off the norm right now.
That's your jam, right? XY. That's kind of your sweet spot. Because for me, it's Sun and Moon. You got in earlier.
It's nostalgia. Yeah, you have nostalgia for when you got in. I have nostalgia for when I got in.
And I think people who got into the Sword and Shield era will absolutely have that same nostalgia. And I look back at the Sun and Moon, and I even am like, damn, I kind of want to buy a Unified Minds booster box just to have it. Because, like, I love that set. And, like, I love the tag team sets. So, yeah, you got one right there. That's a nice set. So, yeah, I definitely think it's fun to, like, have those types of collection goals and have that niche that you like. And I definitely know yours is that XY. Just a quick aside, though, which Star Wars TCG did you used to play? Was it?
It was totally random. Like it was just, I don't know, right place, right time. It was the Attack of the Clones one.
Yeah,
so it was.
I played that one too. You and I
Wizards of the Coast.
That's why. Yes, I have a binder full of the same cards.
And they sold them at like Suncoast Video.
Oh, nice.
And so, like, I remember being there, like, Brian, like, Dragon Ball Z VHSs one day, and, like, we saw the cards, and we bought them, and we started playing, and so we started buying more to build our decks better, and I don't know why it was the Attack of the Clone set, but that's what me and my neighborhood friends at the time all grew up playing together, and so when I, started doing all this, I was like, I want to complete that set and have them all, and so I completed the set, and now I have it in a binder.
Dude, it's got some really cool arts. Like, from those sets, I actually wanted to grade some of my old cards from those sets, my foils that I have, because there's such nostalgic arts from the movies. I'm a huge prequel fan. One of these days, I want to do a side podcast with, like, friends from the hobby and talk about Marvel, Star Wars, like, different fandoms, like the Monsterverse, like Godzilla and King Kong, that kind of thing. All these different fandoms that I'm into. But specifically, I love Star Wars, and so
I'm all in on Star Wars. Like if it's anything other than Pokemon, it's gonna be Star Wars for me.
Yeah, and so that game, I played the hell out of that game, man. So I'm glad you said that. It was fun. The way that they played it, you had like space, ground, you had like heroes, and the way it was dice rolling, but it was also pretty strategic. It was a good game, man.
Just talking about it, I want to play. And I tried to like have my wife play with me, and she just couldn't pick it up. And I'm like, all right, screw it.
Yeah, so I remember back when I got into it, I had nobody around me in my local neighborhood that would actually play. They would play Pokemon, but they wouldn't play the Star Wars game with me because their parents didn't buy it for them. They didn't have it, and they didn't want to use my cards. Blah blah blah. So I had to make my little cousin, who is 2 years younger than me, play, and that was never fun because it was like I had to like coach her into like playing good. It was like, no, no, don't play that card, play the other one. So it was almost like I was playing against myself. And then my mom would play with me, and she would almost, I feel like, let me win sometimes. I was like, no, don't do that. I was so angry as a little kid, like not having good opponents for that game. So, yeah, that's a really fun nostalgic game too. I really like that game. So,
Oh yeah, it was a fun time, man.
do you think that kids, the same way that we look back at cardboard and playing trading cards, are going to look at trading cards like we do, per se? Or you think it's going to be through a different lens in the future that they see these things?
Man, it's so financially driven now, isn't it?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I'm glad you said something because that's what I was kind of getting at. Is I really feel like there was a much different kind of reasoning for like now when kids come up to my table, I love interacting with the kids, but they're also concerned with like what it's worth. Almost half the interactions I have with children at these events is them walking up to the event, showing me a bulk card, saying, "Hey, how much is this worth?" And it's literally like a 5 cent card, and I'm just like, maybe a quarter, and they're like, they're heartbroken. So it is. I really hope that we can maybe move away from that money side a little bit with the children. I get it for people like us, of course we are about the money on it, but like for the children, I hope that some of them can move away from that a little bit, and I don't know what that takes. I
I
don't
feel
know.
like it's unfortunate. I think it's social media, man. It's just like it's social media. It's having access to all the prices. Like we didn't have that. Like Sports Card had Beckett magazines you could get, and I guess you went to the card shop and saw what they had stuff priced at. But like you didn't have a cell phone in your hand. You didn't. Yeah, you had that little thing, but like no one knew what stuff cost. Like everyone knew they loved Charizard or whatever, but it wasn't like this thing where you knew the price of every card. You could just flip on your phone and look up TCG player prices. And I think that's kind of almost ruined that whole like just the innocence of collecting without having dollar amounts attached. 'Cause I remember just like being on the playground and people would just trade cards that you look back and you're just like, well, that was way more value than they got. But it's like, well, yeah, but they had multiple of that hollow, and this person didn't have that hollow, and they didn't have the one they had. So the trade made sense because they had doubles and they needed that one. But like nowadays, you'd be like, oh no, they should have gave you this much value. And it's just like and worrying about condition. Like no one knew condition back then. There was no near mint, light play, heavy play. It was just you had the card, right? And if it wasn't completely destroyed, no one cared about whiting on the back or a scratch on the hollow. It's just things are different now.
Yeah, and at the same time, they're different, but there's a lot of the same that still goes on because I do feel like even though we remember it as that like wholesome level, there was that like craze, that selling out, that scalping that did happen in the 90s. Maybe we just didn't hear about it though because social media wasn't as much there to like talk about it. So like I guess you could say that maybe it's the same story just told over and over.
I guess
But
you'd have to ask like Gary and those guys who were
yeah,
actually in the business side of it back then.
and the shops that sold the cards, like I very much still remember during the pandemic, I called every local shop around me that I could just because I was looking for like old vintage cards to source and then sell on Whatnot. And one of the card stores that I called was this San Francisco card store. And I asked the owner if he had any vintage Pokemon cards, and he literally laughed at me on the phone and said, "Young man, I was the first store on the west coast of the United States to sell Pokemon cards in the US." I was like, "Oh." And he started telling me this story on the phone, and he sat there and talked to me for like 15 minutes. He really had nothing to do, I could tell. And it was a really cool story about how like he helped bring in some of the first Japanese Pokemon cards on the West Coast, and he sold it in San Francisco, and that was where his customers were at. And like people liked it. They didn't like it at first, but then they got crazy about it. And he's like, I still have a lot of that stuff, so if you want to come in and see it, we can make an appointment. Because like in those days, you could still go and like in the pandemic, you could make appointments and go to these stores, but you had to like go out front and pre-plan everything. It
Did
was
you did you
crazy.
do it?
I didn't go to that store because the guy's prices were astronomical. I just tried to suss it out on the phone, and they were really high because he knew he had that clout. But I did with several stores like Ryan's Card House. They used to do a lot of stuff out of the OP games in Sonoma, like where I'm from. And so I've seen him there many times. I saw him streaming there before he had his own place streaming and interacted with him. So I've been to a lot of these stores and done that kind of stuff. But no, not with that one. But I remember that dude was like, he's an old timer. And he was talking about how there was that level of hype back then. So I don't know. Maybe we just didn't see it, you know?
Yeah, and you know, California might be a little different. Like, you know, that was where you could find first edition base set and all the original stuff. Whereas like me in the Midwest, I don't think we ever even saw that stuff. So it could have been a little different there too.
Okay, so in your collection, you never saw Shadowless or first edition or anything like that?
We had Shadowless. I can't remember ever having any first edition base. Definitely, obviously, first edition Jungle Fossil, no, always. But
so I had first edition base set in my original childhood collection because I lived in the west coast of California. I don't realize how like fortunate I was to have that. But you know what's funny? I even back then had the same thought about first edition. I did not care at all about it. I literally only wanted to play like the game.
You know what's so funny? I actually talked to the guys at my local card shop about this to this day. So when I first got back in the hobby, like 2015, and I went in I just found a card shop, and it was one that was still open from back when I was a kid, and so I went in there, and sure enough, they had base Jungle Fossil packs there, and of Jungle and Fossil, they had first edition and regular. And when I was buying my first packs, getting back in the hobby and stuff, and I'm like, well, what are the prices? And I forget what they were. Like, oh, well, you know, 15 for the first edition and like 8 or 9, whatever for the unlimited. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just get the unlimited. I don't care about the first edition. And I'm just like thinking back to that. I'm just like, what was I thinking? I don't care about first edition. And this is when I'm an adult. Like, this is only like, what, 9-10 years ago now. And so it's like, it is really funny how we just no one back then really cared as much and we didn't realize how big of a deal it was.
Yeah, well, one of my biggest sales and my first sale is getting back into the hobby before I really knew the difference between what first edition Shadowless and Unlimited was, is I sold a Shadowless Charizard as an unlimited Charizard as like my first big sale, but it was still like a $250 sale from something that was just sitting in my closet for how long, and it was years in 2019 too, so like this is a long time ago. So I felt great about it, but then looking back on it, it was my Shadowless Charizard, and I realized it was now, and it's like, yeah, I didn't know that, and I probably would have kept it now, but like it's just one of those things. It's a learning curve. I think that happens to everyone, and you have to have that kind of stuff happen. So then you learn, and you kind of know what to look for. And I'm a big advocate in life of like learning through experiences. Like I don't think that you need to necessarily have something hit you on the head to learn from it, but you do learn from those experiences at times, you know? So,
and I think people don't realize how like fast the hobby got optimized. Like I know like Rusty TCA Gaming could tell you ridiculous stories, but even when I got in 15, the first thing I ever bought was on eBay, and it was a base set, Jungle and Fossil complete sets, right? And I don't even know what condition. I don't even think they said conditions, like. And but I looked back, like, you know, and like a year later when I started to get more serious, and I was going back through the base set binder. There was like common, uncommon first editions. There was a Shadowless Hollow. You know, the rest was unlimited. Like no one even knew what they were doing. They were just like completing the set. Some were base 2, which I didn't even realize at the time, but you know they didn't probably either. It was like, you know, it was just so. Nowadays it's like you'd be like laser focused, looking at every border, looking at all the little, if there's any base 2 in there, if like you'd be looking at the condition, asking about the condition. Can I see pictures of the hollows? And it's just crazy how far we've come in just a small amount of time in this hobby.
It still happens. You would be surprised because Nick, my podcast co-host, Retrospects, he was telling me just last weekend at the show that we were at together in Seattle, he had ordered a stack. He bought out TCG Player of the Blastoise from Celebrations, that particular Blastoise. And one Blastoise in the Celebration stack was a base set Blastoise in good condition. It was like an $80 card, basically, and with all of his other Blastoises that got sent to him. And so, like, you still see that with people who know what they're doing. You get cards like that, the same reprint, like, swapped. I can only imagine with Magic the Gathering, the way there's a million different variants and a million different little, little set symbols is different now that, like...
Yu-Gi-Oh! Trying to, like, read all those little codes.
I have no idea, but Yu-Gi-Oh is insane. Like you could say it will say 2001 on the card, but it's like reprinted just yesterday. It's like I have no idea what's going on with Yu-Gi-Oh. It is a wild, wild.
And all the series people know, all the series Yu-Gi-Oh people know all the different shading and all that, and there's literally no marking on the card that tells you. It's such an impossible market to jump into if you don't like know your stuff. But what was that? Was that like a little Easter egg you threw in, or buyout of Celebrations Blastoise? What's going on here?
Yeah, so that's just a little sauce that I've spilled from my co-host, who he will love to hear that I'm spilling all his plays. But
oh, he loves that stuff. He loves giving away the sauce.
Oh yeah, that's his favorite thing. Absolutely, yes. Go and on my next podcast, just tell Retro to spill the sauce. If you're here listening, we do weekly podcasts. We're probably going to try to do one this week, as long as he's not too busy or whatever. Tell us in the chat to spill all the sauce, because he loves spilling the sauce. That's a joke. He won't spill any sauce, but maybe I will. I'll give you guys a couple of plays. You got to come to the podcast for that, though. That's my promise.
Dude, I remember having conversations with him on the phone, and he would still like be super like protective of what he's doing and the things he's like. He's like that, dude.
He's got a very focused, very honed in strategy, and I do believe that he thinks that it's possible to get blown up. I know what his strategy is, and I don't think he can get blown up, so I kind of tend to disagree with that, but I respect his opinion on it. But I personally am, and this is just goes towards most of the hobby, like the Celebrations Charizard thing, like, it goes to the same sort of point. Like, I feel like there are certain things, and most of this hobby is this way, that me talking about something on YouTube, you talking about something, you have a much bigger reach, but even someone with a large reach like Rudy, Alpha Investments, he talks about something. I don't think it can move the dial as much as people might think. I think it could for a short period of time, but because the market is so liquid and it moves so quickly with so much momentum and money behind it, that any one person affecting the market is really difficult. Now, if we're talking about someone like PokeRev, that is more, likely. He's got 2 million subscribers. Literally every kid in the hobby watches him. There is an argument to be made for the large youth. But like anyone like us, like there's no play in the world that I could blow up and make it any thing. I guess you could say I blew up the PSA 1 play. Is that my fault? Or I feel like it's still a play. It's not even like blown up.
Yeah. Yeah, that, and then, honestly, like, maybe if you move back to like vintage or mid-era, some of the more scarce cards, like if you get enough people doing it, it can disappear. It can like really change the market price. I get that, but man, like you said, Celebrations Charizard, you know how many of those there are? Like these newer cards, I mean, I don't think you can do it. I mean, maybe the market price shifts a little bit up or down one way or another based on the supply, based on, how much is out there at the time, but I'm with you. I'm with you.
Van Gogh Pikachu, for example, like that is still a play. Like, how is it that oh no, I'm gonna blow up the Van Gogh Pikachu play. The free $100 you get for grading the $90 promo you can readily get available by me saying this is gonna somehow magically disappear. Newsflash, it's only going up in price lately. So
here, let's blow up another one. The one we were talking about before this, the Hidden Fates birds. Like, listen, it's literally it's a $20 card. You can put in $15 of plastic. It has an enormously high 10 rate. And now it's worth 75. Like, it still isn't blowing up. They sell every day. Everyone knows. Everybody knows about these plays we're talking about. It's just, they're still there.
I think that people get in their own heads and they think they have to be more clever than they need to be. They think that by the time they get around to doing these things, it's going to be too late because they see what happens to first to market cards when they do drop dramatically in price. But what they don't necessarily realize is that after they drop really dramatically in price, even at their lower rates, they usually still continue to be moved. So like, here's another one. I said I was going to do this in the podcast, so might as well do it now. There's plenty of plays to spill. The Paldea evolved Pikachu, the Pikachu from the ETBs that was a play in Japanese because everything graded a 10. If you just buy a bunch of those Pikachus and grade the good ones, those things still sell for greater than $50. That's like a $2 promo card, and they grade relatively easily. So
Charmander from Obsidian Flames ETB.
Insert any good art promo that you need to grade and that is viewed as being like too common or not, not good enough or too much of a low-hanging fruit. That stuff, even though it gets optimized very quickly, even after it gets optimized, the demand is so much for those beautiful cards that you can still make your big margins grading stuff like that. So like that's always been my wheelhouse. Like I've never dealt in the niche, really like low pop, like first to market even stuff. I've always dealt in the stuff that is graded the most, that people wanted the most, that was the most liquid, that was honestly not the biggest profit margins, but still large enough that if you do it in volume, it's great. So like that's kind of always in my wheelhouse. Now I realize that's very different. Like I have friends that deal in like BGS black labels, and their whole play is buying BGS gold labels that look good and then regrading them into black labels. And that is a play that is something that's really difficult to do. It takes large amounts of money because you have to travel to these shows where Beckett's at, and like you have to put in a huge amount of capital just buying the cards in the first place and then hoping on a hope that you can kind of upgrade. So like there are different things that different people do that are far probably better or far worse depending how you look at it. But like you said, you always got to go with what you're comfortable with, what your wheelhouse is, and what works for you, really.
Dude, I think it comes down to, I think like people, once numbers get so big, people's heads can't grasp them. Like, if you like, you look down at like suburbia, right? You see like the sea of homes and you're just like, what do all these people even like do for a living? Or, you go to like, you see every grocery store in like the whole like 20-mile radius. You're just like, if there's this much food packed to the brims in every Walmart and every grocery store here, and it's like that across the whole nation, how is there even this much food and farmers out there? It's the same thing with Pokemon. It's like you see these warehouses or these big, pallets like Rudy has, and you're just like, oh, there's billions of these cards. There's no way any of it's rare. You'll be able to get it forever. You see the population reports. Oh, there's 10,000 graded. That's everywhere. It's not going to be worth anything. And you just you kind of forget how many people out there want all that stuff. And there's a reason why there's that much of it, is because you need it to quench the demand of how many people need food, need a house, want the Pokemon cards, want the slabs. And like you said, you just need to get out of your own way sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the hobby. I think that's what's good about people, content creators talking about it so like candidly, is you can kind of go through that thought process and see how we think of things, because you and I both do this full time. We do it very differently. Like our strategies are extremely different, but I'd say we're both pretty successful at it. And I hope that some of what we talk about, maybe not everyone's going to get some usefulness out of it, but someone can get some level of usefulness out of it, because I do think it's important to have perspective, and that's all it is. It's just perspective, And
that's the best part about the hobby, is everyone can do it differently, and everyone can be successful in their own way.
Yeah, and that's, once again, just going back to not compete. And so if you're looking at yourself, you're like, man, how can I do what X, Y, or Z person is doing? Maybe don't look at it so much like that. Think about what you're doing, and like you're doing probably pretty good for what you've got, There's reasons most likely for what you're doing. And if you can make reasons or think of those reasons, then that's kind of good enough. So I want to answer a question, though, just to Mr. Brad G. Cards. We talked about it a little earlier, but I'm not going to make you go back hours to listen to it. I'm not going to make it Chicago this year. I'm going to try. Actually, it's still up in the air, but as of now, it's probably a no. But I do want to make it try to happen. I just got a puppy, man. The puppy, he can't be left alone, and my wife.
All right, here, I'll get online right now and see what hotels allow dogs.
Oh no, he can't fly that little guy. He's little. Okay, maybe he could fly in a plane. He's a little wiener dog. He could probably go in like a bag or a purse thing, or like a dog purse or whatever you call them.
Oh, that'd be a mess, man. That'd be a mess.
Yeah, no. For everyone on the plane, I'm gonna say that's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, once the dog's 4 or 5, a little easier. Puppy, oh.
Like imagine his ears started hurting. You know what I mean? Like I know when my ears start hurting, I start screaming and crying. So I can only imagine what the dog will do. So.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. It's just a bad timing. I understand.
Are you gonna be flying or are you driving?
Oh, I'm driving. It's only 4 or 5 hours, something like that. So just nice little road trip.
Yeah, dachshunds are the best breeds. I agree with that. He's a little long-haired dachshund, Brad. So I'll have to show him. I'll take a picture and put him on my Instagram. So anyone who's following or not following the Instagram, I'm going to take a picture of my little puppy and put him in my story soon. So if you want to see some puppy pictures, you can follow for that.
So I mean, are you doing any selling outside of live in person these days?
I sold a couple of mystery bags on eBay because the only listings that I have on my eBay are like my Twilight Masquerade Greninja, my Van Gogh Pikachus that I have, and then my mystery bags. Those are literally the only things on my eBay. And one of my 2 mystery bags listings just got removed by eBay. It's been up there for 3+ years and it finally got removed. I say finally because I feel like I've had mystery bag in the title, which is why they removed it the entire time. So it wasn't like hiding. It was like, if it was hiding in plain sight. It had so many sales and so many views that it made me a little bit sad to get taken down. But
That sucks.
it's fine. Like I sold 1 a week on that listing, which is like very minimal compared to like what I would like to be selling. So it is what it is, an end of an era. But I think eBay went and actually took down a bunch of mystery listings last week. So if you also are selling mystery bags and you're gone under the radar, well done, because they took mine down. But yeah, it was just like a $20 mystery slab that you get a CGC PSA BGS 7 or higher for $19.99 and free shipping. And
Yeah.
it had a bunch of like random cards in the picture, but yeah, so
Dan does similar to that, doesn't he? Catch him all.
yeah, I think his probably are going to get flagged the same as mine. I think it was something that eBay did like across the board. They're trying to take down all of those types of listings unless they have a certain way that you word them. I'm not really that interested to learn the way that I need to word it to do it. I make the same mystery bags to sell in person. I basically, any of my 9s, my 8s, God forbid, I get an 8 and a modern card. But anything that's like not crackable that I don't feel like is worth me sending again and grading, I just throw it in my $20 mystery bags. And I sell them in person. And so like I just throw my logo on it, put a slab and 1 booster pack. Usually the pack is like a cheaper modern pack, like $3 or $4 or something. And I make my money, my $5-10 on those, and that's...
Dude, I just thought of a great idea. Here's what you need to do. You need to produce the hats and then make the mystery bag in the hat. So you charge like 30 or 40 bucks and you get the hat with a mystery slab inside.
That would be so cool. I literally would put a hat in every single mystery box and force people to have my branding. If I could do that, it'd get it cheap enough manufactured. And I'm not kidding. Anyone watching, if you know any manufacturers that you use for clothing that you've done in the past, or maybe you have a friend who he has hats made for him and you think, or he has stuffed animals made for his brand, I need someone like that. So please hit me up. I'm going to shill for that because I want to sell those hats, but I have to get them made. I can't just buy them because they don't sell them anymore on the Pokemon. It was from like 2016. It's an old thing. They don't sell it anymore. So I would totally buy those from the Pokemon Center and sell them. Just put like my little stamp of brand on it. But they are, alas, they are $200 or like $100+ on eBay. That's what people are paying for them, is like $100 on eBay.
That's all because of you, man.
Must be. That's what I'm gonna say. I will take that whole that little bit of, what is it? Compliment. No, there is one thing that I will take credit for that people are going to get mad at me for saying this, but on Whatnot, I was the one to start doing Rip Till You Hit. I was the first Pokemon streamer to ever do it, and I copied it from a sports streamer that did something similar in sports that I just ported over with the code cards in Pokemon. So I called it back then, I called it Green Means Go, and I think it's called the Green Means Go because the green code cards were a non-holo hit. And so, like, whenever you got a green code card, I would just keep ripping. And so I didn't call it Rip Till You Hit until later on. I think someone else coined Rip Till You Hit in the hobby. But I was the first person on Whatnot to ever do that style of game. And I know people are going to be like, no, you weren't, blah, blah, blah. But I always have to say that just to toot my own horn just a little bit. I remember when I copied it from the sports guy, I was like, holy crap, this is a really novel idea. Is anybody doing this? And they weren't. And so I did it. It was cool. So fun times. So you're welcome if you're a streamer who uses that game, because that came from the brainchild of the old card shop.
I've done it.
It's a fun game. It's honestly one of the only games that favors the buyer rather than the seller in most cases, or at least gives sort of a more fun experience, in my opinion. It's better than just like one pack and ripping nothing and saying, sucks to be you, on to the next one, you know, so.
Yeah, I think when I do it, I always make it like a minimum of 3 packs or something like that. That way, if they pull someone the very first pack, they at least get a couple more.
Yeah, I remember doing similar type things. I remember putting like a minimum or like thresholds on, like, if you bid up more, you would get an extra, like, instead of ripping till you got a V, it would be a full art, or instead of ripping till you got full art, a rainbow rare or an alternate art or something like that, you know.
My main goal with like the pack rips, I always want everyone to at least go home somewhat happy. Like, you know, if people buy like a few packs from me, don't get anything, I have like a box of second chances. I'll throw in a hit, like just you know, automatically, or if you know, whatever it may be, like reptilian hits, I make it to where they get enough. Like, I just always like to like give something to everyone. I don't want anyone to like buy in and get absolutely nothing and feel like they got shafted. Like, I always try to make, you know, it at least feel like you get something for, you know, buying into it. I mean, I know it goes back to that whole like the Blake's breaks things. It's like, I don't even know how you could do that. Like, I get excited when people pull the main hit. Like last night, we pulled the Sylveon Gardevoir alt art from Unbroken Bonds, and it's like it's the best feeling. I don't know why you'd want to like take that away. It's like you're making your profit off selling the packs. Like, why do you have to take that stuff further and search every pack and pull up the hit? Like, that's one of the main things I feel like keeps people coming back. If you pull someone the Moonbryon or something, that brings people back because they know you're not a scammer and they have an actual chance here. So like, I see it a little different than I guess those guys did. But I mean, yeah, that's my main thing is everyone has a good time and goes home with something.
Yeah, those guys were something else. I think most people in the Pokemon hobby, they belong in the Pokemon hobby. I knew right away with those guys that they were not the typical guys, and they were the guys in high school that would have been making fun of me for playing trading cards and for playing Magic and collecting Pokemon. They were not the guys who would have been like, hey man, let's be friends about this. They would have been like teasing me about it. So like when they came in and started making tons of money and being like these celebrities in the hobby, it felt like the jocks who used to give me the hardest time coming in and trying to steal my fucking thunder. And it pissed me off, excuse my language. And so I was never really that into it. And so I was happy when those guys got out of the hobby, because I don't think there's a lot of people like that. I do believe most people in the Pokemon hobby, which makes me happy about the Pokemon hobby, they're more wholesome than the average, even more wholesome than Magic players. Like, I'll be the first one to tell you that Magic players, a little rough around the edges at times. Pokemon players can have their you know, little tendencies, but they're a little bit softer, a little nicer, a little bit more wholesome in my opinion, and more family oriented. And I always liked that element, that family oriented. Hell, I'm not a family oriented podcast. I curse and I'm doing entertainment for like adults mostly, but I really appreciate seeing that family oriented element of Pokemon, and really I like focusing on that and, you know, pushing that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why like it's been so successful. It's so like it's so universally accepted by everyone. You know, like even Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like it's got that darker like, you know, type of, you know, like the possession and, you know, the eye and all that. Like, so like, you know, it turns parents away. Magic, people like what thought it was demonic, so it turned parents away. Like, parents all supported Pokemon. Like, oh yeah, we can leave our kids in front of the TV and watch Pokemon. It's all just for. And so like, I think that's one of the reasons it became so successful is because of that reason.
Yeah, the small game store. So I grew up in California for the beginning of my life, but then I moved to Oklahoma for about 6 years in the like younger preteen, like early teenage years. So like where I grew up, I had a local game store that had like Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering. It had computers with like StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo, all land up together. Because this is pre-BattleNet, or what, BattleNet wasn't big, but like we had land up computers to play on. So we would all play computers in the shop, and the shop literally existed for probably 3 years of my life while I lived there, and it got ran out of town because it was next to the movie theater. There were picketers on Sundays with like pickets saying this is the evil, this is the devil. I forget what they specifically were on about, but they thought that it was evil, and I would have to literally walk past these people as I was going to get picked up by my parents on Sundays at the card shop when they eventually shut the place down. Like, I don't know if it was these people exactly, but like the town was such like a hostile environment at that time for like that type of a shop. It was too dark in the early 90s, I guess. It got ran out of town and they moved to Las Vegas. I remember the family's like, all right, we can't be here anymore. The dude had long hair. He was like a long hair hippie guy in Oklahoma. And he would wear like really like tie-dye shirts. And I didn't know anything at the time. I was like an 8-year-old. I was like a 9-year-old or whatever. But they totally got ran out of town. And I think a lot of that was because of like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons and the perception of like in the 90s it being evil. So you're right, Pokemon really got the benefit of being a cartoon that people weren't like thinking it was like evil and all that.
Yeah. So what you said something about BattleNet?
Yeah, so back in the old days, and
So I remember BattleNet from StarCraft.
yeah, that was the same thing. So Blizzard was the other the game company that I'm a big fanboy of, who made World of Warcraft, Diablo. They made the old Vikings game on like the handheld.
For sure.
They were an awesome company for so long until they kind of split off and did their own thing and went corporate, and that changed with like World of Warcraft. But they were always a company I really got behind. Like before they split off, I would have said they were one of my favorite companies on the planet. So yeah, I was really big in this Diablo. I played so much Diablo 2. I played StarCraft, Warcraft 3. I loved all the custom variants of all the games in like those RTS games. But Blizzard.
I was an addict of StarCraft. Like, man, it was bad. It was bad. I tried to get like super competitive with it. It was like I'd have days on Saturdays where I just sit there for like 12 hours a day playing StarCraft.
Yeah, okay, so I was in wrestling in high school, and our wrestling meets would be on Saturday. I remember literally ditching wrestling meets and making my coach so angry to go raid Molten Core for a 40-man raid in World of Warcraft when I was in high school. And that was back when Molten Core hadn't been defeated. RAG hadn't actually been beaten by any server. So I skipped out of meets just to go and play WoW on the weekend with my best friend and stuff. So sorry, coach. I if you're watching now, I'm sorry. I wasn't sick those weekends. I was actually playing World of Warcraft. But you knew that. You knew that about me, didn't you? He's not watching this, but if he was, that would be hilarious.
Yeah, it does get you thinking. It's like, man, I wonder if kids these days are gonna have like memories like that, you know?
I think they will. I think kids these days really love Fortnite, and they really do play a lot of Minecraft. And honestly, for the same ticket, I think the Epic Games and Fortnite will have the same type of like hype as like for me Blizzard had back in the day as a gaming company, and those kids will like that company. And the same thing for like kids that like Minecraft. That's such like an all inclusive like thing that I feel like it spans greater than time. Minecraft is kind of timeless. That's something I could see certain kids from this era having a real connection to. But like, I do struggle. I've been, I've always been considered like bearish when talking about Pokemon in the future, because I've always erred on the side of, I do not believe that physical cardboard cards and collectibles are something that will last indefinitely, that kids will keep going back to and being like, oh, when they're all digital, virtual reality, everything, they're going to keep wanting to go back to the cardboard because it's old school, like grandpappy like to do. It's like, no, I've never been of that belief. I do believe that there's a half-life for this stuff, and eventually things will stop going up and it will shift over maybe to the VGC video game, digital goods. Maybe Pokemon Pocket becomes a really big player in this whole like digital NFT, like own your own card digital. If you're like in early, maybe that'll be a big thing. I don't know, not financial advice at all, but in the future, I have not, even though I love this stuff and I will go to the grave with my PSA 2 Eevee card that I have. This is my favorite card in my entire collection. You cannot get this grade if you want to. You can't try to get a PSA 2 if you send 100 cards in. But that Eevee as a 2, I'm going to go to the grave with that. Not because I believe it's going to be valuable, but because nobody's going to want it at the end of the day, because I think kids will have moved on to something bigger and better. So I know it's not a popular take. Everyone wants to hear all their investments are going to go up forever. Everyone's safe in Pokemon because it's multi-generational. They want to hear that their kids today are going to have as much of a connection as they did when they were kids because they're a family unit, because it has this bonding, this multi-generational nature. And I'm just here to say that's a lot of fucking copium. And I'm sorry if that's hard to hear, but it's cardboard, bro. It's cardboard. Listen to yourself. These things, they do go out of style eventually. So I am of the belief that you should be capitalizing on a little bit of the profit that you can make on some investments while this is popular, because right now it's the most popular it's ever been. So all I know is it's popular now. That's the only thing I know for sure. So.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like, it's realizing gains is like the biggest portion of any investing. Like, people who, I mean, think about people who like held Blockbuster till the bitter end, or people like all these things. It's like, you know, investing always has, depending on what you're in, it always has its times to, you know, take profits. And when you have those opportunities, if you're not taking any money off the table, man, it's like it becomes more and more of a gamble. So yeah, I agree with that. Like, every time you do see some gains on something, take some profits off the table. You still, you know, want to be like me and, you know, invest in the stuff and hold some long term. And that way you can't ever like completely get hurt. Like I talked about it before. It's just like, you know, as long as it lasts long enough, you're kind of covered, because like at this point, as long as I've been in, all the profits I have taken, like I've still taken more profits at this point, I think, than I actually have invested. So it's like, if everything went to absolute zero, I've still taken more from the hobby than I have in it. And so it's just like, yeah, as long as you continue to do that, you can consistently get ahead of the game enough to where if, you know, Armageddon never happened, at least you're still covered somewhat.
And I've also heard you say specifically, and I really like this message that you go back to time and time again, that at a certain point, you feel like that certain products get to a point where they stop growing as quickly as they were before, and they max out at certain levels, and that's when you like to typically sell and reinvest in other things that aren't quite maxed out that you see more potential gains for. And so I think you're very aware, and you're really good at kind of notating when those things sort of start sluggishly moving, and that's kind of where, I mean, that's what Hidden Fates has done. It's maxed out at 150 for years and years. So like, I'm a fool for buying Hidden Fates allegedly if I were investing in it, but since it's a flip, it's different. So yeah, it's one of those things that I really like that about what you say, though, is how taking the money off of the table at times is important. And specifically, I hear you saying when items we reach their maximum potential, or not maximum potential, but when they seem like they've slowed down in your head, because I think you always have an idea like, okay, this should be an X amount item, and even if
the perfect way here, the perfect way to describe it is, you know, when a company is considered a growth stock in the stock market, they don't pay a dividend because you're betting on the company is going to become more and more successful. Their product is going to take over, you know, something like an Nvidia type thing or an Apple. Like, you're betting on that company, right? You're betting on this new product. Well, what happens is when those companies become successful and they kind of, you know, they stop having as much research and development. They can become like a Coca-Cola where it's just steady. They're going to have a ton of sales every year. They're always going to be in business, but they're steady. Well, then they start paying a dividend because you're not making as much money off the growth anymore. They want to pay you to own the company and just keep your money invested. The issue with Pokemon is once it goes through its massive growth phase and it stabilizes, they're not paying you. And so, yeah, like after the growth phase, it can make sense, you know, unless you believe like Evolving Skies can be another team up. Hey, I'll tell you, I was one of the people who sold team up at 750 a box back in the pandemic. And so I missed out on, you know, triple my money again. And so it's like, yeah, Evolving Skies to do that. But the odds are, other than the first 4 XY sets, which were more closer to like black and white print runs than current day, but like every other set after, let's say, Furious Fist, we've had what? Ancient Origins is the only set to really break 1,000. And then we have Team Up, and I think Cosmic's starting to flirt with it. Very rarely do we see these boxes break 1,000. So once they get up in that $400, $500, $600, $700 range, it might make sense to move out, move into something new.
Yeah, and that $500 to $1,000 plateau is a very difficult plateau to get over for certain items in this hobby, and it's almost like it's a mental thing for some people. Like once it gets to like that X $200, $500, $1,000, $2,000, it starts to get like these different plateaus. So it does, I think, move in waves. So like if you don't capitalize on that big wave, you might sit for a long time. Like Evolutions boxes, for example. Evolutions boxes went from like $200 or like $100 or under $100 to like 300 to 700 to 1,000 overnight almost. And now they're steadily kind of sitting at that 700 range, kind of
Yep.
back, which is much stronger than where they started, but they've really just kind of stagnated. And so if anyone had really sat on those when they bought in at 700, you're kind of just sitting there stagnant. But if you took your gains at 300, 400, 700, you probably would be pretty good at this point to move on to other things.
And then it was funny on the investing side of things. Like everyone always wants to like have their like scorecard on like how good of an investor you are. Like, well, if you sold after 3 years, you're just not a real investor. Real investor holds at least 5 to 10 or 20 years. It's like, no, you're investing because you see potential in the item rising. Nobody knows, one, if it's really going to rise, or I mean, how much it's going to rise, at what rate it's going to rise, and what time frame it's going to take. And so it's like, you don't know Evolutions was going to hit $1,000 in 4 years, but you bought it, at $80 or $90 in hopes that in the future it's going to rise more, and you think it's going to outproduce other places you can put your money. When something like that happens and you take profits, it doesn't mean you're like not a true investor, don't believe in it, aren't long-term focused. It means you saw the opportunity and you got out. Like, hey, maybe that box that never happened and it took 10 years to reach that, and then you sold it 10 years. Like, everything's different. It's just like you said, take the profits when you have the opportunities and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's really something that we always talk about, like on the cardboard hands, is like how important it is to be selling all the time. Even though it's also important to have some sort of, I don't think that ever, so I differ in like the way that Nick views things and other flippers view things, and like quick flip. You just always want to constantly be turning. I do think that it's good to be turning over inventory quickly, but I also think it's important to, while at the same time you have that inventory that you're turning over quickly, to have some speculation pieces as well that you legitimately believe in, that you're waiting to accrue and waiting to be what they should be before you sell them, because I don't believe the market's always right. I think
100%.
that some sellers, they're like, oh, the market's the market, and that's what matters. I typically tend to think the other way. I think that I've been in this hobby for a long time, and I value my experience and what I've seen in cyclical natures, patterns, things that I believe are replicable or not, things that I see that maybe I wouldn't have seen years ago that I see now. I value that experience. And so I do not believe that it doesn't matter. I do believe that certain things the market is just wrong about. So I do still speculate on certain things.
Dude, I do the exact same thing. Like, where I have my slab boxes, where I have everything for sale. And then I have the back stock, the ones I have doubles of that are already listed. And then next to that, I have a box of cards that I'm holding because I think they're like right now. I've pulled back a lot of my Team Rocket style cards in hopes that they'll get pumped from a Team Rocket set. So like, Giovanni's Charisma from 151, or like Boss's Orders, or just other Team Rocket style cards that I'm like, you know what? Maybe these are going to be more. Maybe when I see some buyouts on these, I'm going to wait on these. Or some of the SIRs that I get them back from grading. I look them up and I'm like, this card's $60 in a 10. That doesn't seem right. I'm going to push that. And so I do that same thing. And like, here's the thing. Like, I get the constant flipping, how they do it. But my thing is, it only really comes into effect if you run out of capital. Like, if you're telling me I no longer have enough capital to flip at the rate I want, then okay, sell it. But if you got cash in the bank, you got enough capital to run the business, you're still churning and burning, buying new collections, buying new inventory, what's it going to hurt to put some stuff aside if you still have enough to run the business successfully? Like, I think it makes sense to do what you're doing too.
Yeah, and I mean, it is just to each their own too, because I'm sure there's people in the chat who do one or the other or a combination of both, and it probably works fine for them. But totally, I have always been of the thought that like certain things aren't quite where they should be for whatever reasons, and I will keep them and sell them when they are. And other things I'm like trying to sell quick because I'm like, these are way overvalued right now. I'm like selling 10 of these before I sell one of these other things worth the same amount. And that's kind of where I've been at with Topps cards for a long time. Like, I haven't sold a Topps PSA 10 card in probably like a year plus, because all the Topps, I have 2 or 3 PSA 10s that are like so low pop that are just like, to me, so much, I value them so much more than everyone else that like, I guess I'm a Topps collector. I guess I'm a Topps investor, because I'm certainly not a seller of this stuff at the prices that it needs to be sold at if I wanted to sell it. So
Yeah, man, there was a lot of the crazy stuff that went to the moon during that period, like the tops, those like first Japanese cars that were going so crazy. Like,
Yeah, all the
yeah,
Bandai
it is
cards.
wild to see how fast it slowed down.
Yeah, and it's just because there's not enough hype around it. There's not enough people who are making content about it. They're not talking about it, and it just doesn't have that oomph of like the trading card game, the TCG. So like that's what's so important about Pokemon to me is that it keeps on making it as a game. If it ever stopped making like current sets or stopped doing tournaments or stopped doing the world's competition and slowly like started killing that off, I would be really, really worried. There are some people who believe that this hobby would survive indefinitely even if they stop playing competitively because like who even plays the game anyway? It's all collectors based, blah blah blah. Trust me, if it stopped being a game, it would be hugely detrimental to the hobby and it would be in my opinion it would put a probably 5 to 10 year half-life on it after they stopped.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
less.
Pokemon could definitely mess with like the print runs and the supply and really cut that to really help. But yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty devastating to have no gameplay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff Pokemon can do. To be clear, think that Pokemon has a lot that they could still bring out that's up their sleeve that they haven't even used. Like,
Like,
they
where
could
are
bring
first
out,
editions?
yeah, literally, they could do serialized cards. I mean, they could do all kinds of stuff that you see in the sports card. They could do cell animation things, from the actual anime. They could put that in the pack, like a real part of the cell animation, and you could pull that out of a pack maybe. Like, they could go really bonkers with it if they really started needing to. And the fact that they haven't needed to yet, it says a lot about the strength of the IP, the fact that they can do what they do and not have to really play all their cards. You see that? You see what I did there?
What do
Uh,
what do you think? Like, I mean, in my opinion, I think the first edition stamp solves like every problem. Are you of that mindset?
Opposite. I hate the first editions. I think if they ever brought first editions back, it would be another sign of weakness. And I think it doesn't do any benefit for the game. It doesn't help the players. It
No.
doesn't help the people that you want to. It doesn't help you sell more. It literally just makes the investors happy and the player and the people who don't get it unhappy. So it's a net negative in my opinion. That was one of the best things that Pokemon ever did was removing the first editions from their
Wow.
cards. That's always been my stance on it. I just don't see what it does for the game.
I'm the exact opposite. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it solves the issue of not having valuable cards. Like, I don't think you should ever have a set that has a 20, 30, $40 top hit card. Like, so I think what the first edition stamp would do, it'd be a smaller print run. It would give, collectors, investors something to buy right away. It'd allow have high dollar cards in the set. And then when then you send unlimited out, and now all the players can have all the cards as cheap as they want. Everyone can have their game pieces. It can all have very little value, and then everyone can have every single card. There'll be no issue ever with kids not getting cards and players not having cards. And then the collectors and investors will have their first edition stamps. And I think it solves the problem, in my opinion.
I just think it would separate your buyer base and it would split your customers in such a way that seems sort of unnecessary at this point because what it would do it would throttle the desirable cards into the first for the collectors in the first edition, and then the non-desirables would be like the unlimited or whatever, and it would be understood that those weren't like desirable, but they would still have some value to them because players would need them. So then the players would go towards the first edition cards that were like available, that were cheap, that weren't good for collectors, just to use them. And so it would just solve in my opinion, it would create more problems than it would solve. And it wouldn't help them sell more per se. I just don't know what problem it solves, I guess.
What about serialized?
Same problem. Now I have a huge problem with serialized. If they put a serialized card into a Pokemon product, that means they can never reprint that product again. It can never
Isn't it great?
I think that's horrible. As from a game perspective, that's horrible because then if you have something like the some certain card that you need in a deck, like Shaman from the XY era, Shaman EX.
What about in a set like Celebrations or something that's not playable though?
Something like that where it's more of a collector's set, I could see there being less of a problem with like serialization, but I feel like every Pokemon card set is supposed to be somewhat playable. unless we're talking about stuff like, now, they made the classic collections. All of those have serialization, like 1 in 10,000, and they made 10,000 of them, or, you know, that would have made it actually desirable for people to want to get that thing, because I think you and I discussed it. I was famously super wrong about those classic collections. You had a much better take on the classic collection.
Oh, you mean the black box?
Yeah, the black box that released around.
I thought you meant Celebrations Classic Collection. I'm like,
no, you were. I think we both had the same take on the Celebrations one. No, it's the one that had the 3 decks in it with the gold cards in Japanese, and then they had the retro hollows and the old school Charizard, Blastoise. Loved those cards. Loved the decks. Loved the product. But I think with that product, if they would have had serialization with it, since it wasn't a playable product, it was meant to be collectible, it would give it an extra layer that people would maybe want more. I think that would have saved that product. And I was famously wrong about that. I think I was the most wrong about that than anyone on YouTube. I was saying, like, that thing was going to double in price by the end of the holidays. I was saying all this, like, I was going in on it because I bought like 4 of them.
do you ever watch Alpha Investments anymore?
I don't watch a lot of Rudy anymore. I just, his stuff, even though I appreciate what he does, it's all the same stuff, man. He's just the same thing over and over. Rudy.
Well, watch his recent one where he does like a warehouse tour. He doesn't say what they are, but everyone kind of knows. He's got piles of those things, man. He's like, I'm not going to tell you what this is, but if you know, you know. And I'm just like, I wonder if he's making a move on those.
I mean, I personally still love the product. You can get them online for like under $200 when you find desperate sellers who are trying to sell them. And I love the product for that price. You know what I mean?
That's getting to a price point where I'm liking it. Yeah, under 200?
Yeah, like 175, 180 for like desperate sellers. I had some guy come up at a show. He had 4 of them in a wagon, and he was trying to sell them for 200 each. And I just didn't want them at the time, but it's getting to the point where I'm like, I kind of do want them now. So
I did the same thing with Charizard.
Serialization would have been fine with, though, but where something like a mainline set, good God, Alex, could you imagine if Evolving Skies had serialization? Could you imagine the problem that we would have with the print run of that? They've reprinted that set like 5 separate times I can think of, if not more, if you call them secret reprints or mini reprints. And if they couldn't do that, we'd have $7,000 Evolving Skies boxes, $10,000 Evolving Skies boxes. I mean, what would you... So you need to be able to reprint in this hobby for the demand that we have. I think Magic gets away with having serialization because they don't have as large of a demand for the product that they put serialized cards in. They put it in their collector's box. And there's just not as much of a print or a demand of those cards. And then they can always go back to their unlimited print run and just say, well, the same card is non-serialized in the regular booster box, so use that, nerds.
Yeah. No, I like your idea, though, like, about the whole TCG Classic. Like, I had a similar take on the Charizard UPC. Like, when it first came out and it was like, everyone was all about it, I came out in video, I said, I hate it. Like, I don't think it's worth this. Like, I didn't make sense. Then when it dropped to, like, 80s, and I was just like, okay, now I'm bullish on it. Now it makes sense. It's time to pick these up. And it's the same thing with that. It's like, I didn't like it at $400, $500, $300 and something dollars, but we're talking under 200. Now it starts making a little more sense.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where price point matters. And you know, at certain price points, it makes sense in the moment if you grade, you look at first to price, you know, first to market things. But when you consider like what's going to happen to those cards once they come to market, the you know, race that's going to occur, it's just, it doesn't seem as worth it. So, yeah, I think that's the thing with anything is that there's a price point where it makes it worth it.
And it would have probably worked in 2021.
It probably, or if it had serialization, like we were talking about. Like, if they actually just put a little something extra into it where it made it a little bit more special, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Think it's about time we should probably, I know you have another stream to do today, and I haven't had lunch yet. So I think it's about a good time to end the words of my good friend, Mr. Nesto, shooter Dan. What's up, Nesto? Shout out to the Spicy Boys podcast, Joker Hour. You guys are doing some good stuff over there.
I've stopped into one of those too. Like we talk about, I think I've like stopped in at least one time to like almost everyone's stuff, you know, just to kind of see what people are saying. It's kind of like a good thing and bad thing now. It's like it's truly impossible to watch everyone's stuff now. Like, especially the amount of everyone's posting and how many different people have podcasts and channels. So, you know, every week I try to make it a point to at least like watch one of everyone's stuff. And, but yeah, I've stopped into one of the Spicy Boys before.
I love them. I personally think that Nesto is one of the most quotable people in the entire hobby, and he's just freaking hilarious. And him and Jake Smith have such a great like chemistry together that I feel like I'm just hanging out with them. So I really appreciate them putting out content that, you know, it's very hobby focused, very collector focused, and I appreciate some of that because they're probably two of the biggest collector boys in the whole hobby. Like, it's wild. I thought the Green Shiz and Oak on Slab podcast, I thought they were big collector boys. No. Nesto and Jake, they are the biggest collectors in the whole hobby. I've seen it. I've heard it. And so I'm just saying, calling it as I see them.
Yeah, we need more like that. We were on one of my Patreon live streams. We were all talking about that because like I have a Patreon live streams where like anyone who's part of it can get out, like kind of like this, just they can come on screen, they can get up to however many people. But we were saying like we need to have more podcasts like that where, you know, a few of us, 3, 4, 5 of us just get on screen and just BS about the hobby. Like no like reason for the stream, no like, you know, topic, no like debate, no this, just literally hang out and just talk and BS and like give our takes on things and whatever comes up, whatever the chat's talking about, and just like hang out. We need more hangout streams.
Yeah, and honestly, thank you so much for coming on. This was exactly what I was hoping would be with you. That was what my intention was just to kind of have a cool little chill hangout stream because like
Yeah.
we haven't chopped it up enough, and I just can't keep up with everything. So I hope it was fun for anyone who watched too, because like I had a lot of fun interacting with the chat as well. So
Had a great time, man. I appreciate you bringing me on, dude.
hey, anytime, dude. We're gonna have to do this one. I say, and it's like adults always say this to each other. Like, we gotta hang out more often. Then 6 months go by, and they're like, still not hanging. So we'll probably have another one in another 6 months.
No, we'll make it before that. Like I said, I'm gonna start having like weekly like hangout streams. So I'm gonna make it a point to do that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Absolutely, that sounds really fun. I mean, I always do the call-in shows whenever I see the call-in shows when my friends are having them. So I feel like it's such a good idea.
Yeah, as long as you're careful with them, right? You gotta like pre-screen.
Yeah, I was one of the people who had some unfortunate bad behavior on one of the call-ins, but I edited it out really quick, so it wasn't a problem at all. So, but yeah, I mean, it's easy. I know almost everyone in the chat at this point, so.
Yeah.
And that,
Cool.
That being said, if you're in the chat at this point, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours in, thank you. You are the true goats. You guys in the chat always being here, hanging out, and supporting us. We greatly appreciate it. And that being said, Alex, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to shut her down and call it a day, and then we'll probably jump in the stream and see you talk about some Pokemon. So anyone here, go watch Alex's stream later on today. What is it, in like an hour or 2 hours?
Yeah, it's gonna be on Eli, so Pokemart USA's channel. It's our weekly stream we do.
Yeah, so go watch their podcast because it's also really good. So if you didn't get enough Alex here, he's going to be talking with Eli with a whole different style in the next couple hours.
For sure.
So we'll see you there. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.